Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Swamp Lord, I have an intelligence system. Chapter 21. After a night of rest, the next day was July 12th. Lear summoned the army in the early morning and sorted out the supplies. After paying off the bill at the House of Roses, he rode the most handsome black horse in the team, asked the swamp people to catch up with the 30 carts carrying goods, and slowly headed out of the city. 200 neatly lined wetland lizardmen followed as guards. Organize the army and enter the wilderness. He has been looking forward to this day for a long time. At this moment, his mood is quite high. In the early morning, there are not many pedestrians on the street, and the wide street is very empty. The thick bluestone ground is more than 150 meters wide, with 8 carriageways on the left and right, and enough pedestrian passages. And there are as many as 20 such main roads, connected horizontally and vertically, dividing the entire city of Loran. Just transporting these bluestones to the city is a huge and exaggerated project. Square-pointed buildings stand on both sides of the street. These houses are ancient and exquisite, with different heights and jagged teeth. The colorful flowered glass reflects the gorgeous light, and the exquisite heroic reliefs carved on the walls tell the past and glory of this city. At the corner of the cross street, there is a clock tower with a height of more than 20 meters. The huge, angular brass clock cast by the dwarves is moving. At 3, 6, 9, and 12 o'clock, the city will be shrouded by the huge sound of bells. No matter where you are, you can hear the sound of time. The Loran family took 1,000 years to build this magnificent city. It is also the most powerful heavy shield against the erosion of the wilderness in the northern province of the Griffin Empire. A shining pearl. Crossing the bustling streets, the convoy slowly passed through the tall and magnificent gate of Loran City. Lear looked back and saw the towering city wall, like a towering and immovable mountain. It is more than 100 meters high. The surface is covered with traces of war, like a veteran with outstanding military exploits. On the city wall, various heavy siege weapons stand. Catapults, heavy crossbows, arrow towers. They are densely packed and countless. At the gate, 2 120-meter-high giant warrior statues holding heavy swords are majestic like miracles, and the swords cross in the air. It seems to declare to the outside world that Loran City is insurmountable. These 2 statues have been rebuilt no less than 10 times with the war, and each time they are rebuilt, they will be taller than before. This is almost the symbol of Loran City. A crisp eagle cry made Lear look up subconsciously. In the sky, hundreds of griffins, the emblem of the empire with a wingspan of more than 10 meters, spread their wings and soared. These ferocious lives have built a sky defense line, and if necessary, they can take off 10 times or 100 times the number at any time. After taking a deep look at this magnificent city, Lear felt a little heroic in his heart. His territory in the future should be like this. No longer nostalgic, waved his hand, and asked the army to speed up. Outside the city are vast farmlands, endless. The green wheat fields swayed slowly under the breeze. It gave people endless beauty. After marching more than 10 kilometers, the city of Loran gradually disappeared from sight. In the magical fantasy world, even the timid craftsmen like the swamp people are much stronger than the earthlings. The marching speed was not slow. Starting from the early morning, they stopped to rest until they encountered a well on the roadside at noon. After several hours, they had walked 30 kilometers forward, but no one was too tired. Last night, they had dinner made of noya rice, so they didn't need to make a fire to cook for the next few days. It saved a lot of trouble. The hundreds of kilometers around Loran City belong to the safe zone. The Guard Corps patrols every day and will immediately eliminate any threats once they are found. The wide road built by Loran City and filled with bluestone is enough for people to gallop easily. Wash your face with clean water and your fatigue will disappear. Continue on your way. When the sun sets, they marched another 40 kilometers before settling down. Traveling 70 kilometers a day is already considered very fast. This also gave Lear a new understanding of the power of ordinary people in this fantasy world. The night is very dangerous and not suitable for traveling. After arriving at a small town, the convoy settled down. The next day continued. Until noon, we finally got out of the straight and wide bluestone road. The road surface suddenly turned into a bumpy mud road, and the speed of travel began to slow down. The 100 to 200 km area extending from Loran City to the wilderness belongs to the control area. Every few days, the Griffin Corps will come to patrol. If there are monsters of a certain scale gathering, they will be cleared at a fixed point to prevent them from forming a scale. But there are still a small number of wilderness monsters. This area is currently prohibited from being selected by the Pioneer Lord. Because it is completely under the control of Loran City, every year there will be official personnel sent to build villages and towns and reclaim land. Continue to go 200 to 300 kilometers deep into the wilderness, which belongs to the alert area. Every half a month, Llewellyn City will patrol once. If there is a large-scale gathering of wilderness life, the army will be dispatched immediately to eliminate it to prevent the impact on the control area. This range is also the area most chosen by the pioneering lords. Several large-scale pioneering territories are built here. It can be radiated by Llewellyn City, and will not face the threat of the wilderness directly, with the highest safety factor. 300 kilometers to 500 kilometers, in the monitoring area. Loran City will monitor this area to a certain extent. Even if a large-scale gathering of monsters is found, it will not act rashly unless the other party enters the alert zone. Therefore, the degree of danger begins to rise sharply. 500 kilometers away is the real wilderness that has not been developed. Loran City will only send the Griffin Corps to patrol it every once in a while to prevent large-scale military gatherings in the wilderness. But the Griffin Corps often suffers losses when entering it. Orcs, barbarians, snakemen, grey dwarves, undead. Almost all races are entrenched in the depths of the wilderness. The spheres of influence they rule are of different sizes. It is said that there is a powerful ogre empire thousands of miles away from the wilderness, and the power of the other party is not inferior to that of Loran City. It's just that the journey is too far, and the wilderness cuts off everything, so there is no way to confirm it. Entering the control area 100 kilometers away, Lear ordered Bane to take out a few pieces of dried dragon feces and put them in a pottery basin. Bane looked at the dried dragon feces and felt a little uneasy. Sir, if the earth dragon feces is stored for too long, it will lose its smell and its effect will be greatly reduced. He looked a little annoyed. When he was checking the supplies before, he asked Lear, but he said it was ready, so he didn't look at it carefully. Now it seems that he was still careless. Without the earth dragon feces, the monsters he encountered would increase exponentially. The difficulty of this journey will soar. Lear looked at the hunchbacked, wrinkled swamp hero and smiled. Don't worry, this is not the feces of the earth dragon. Hags, drip blood into it. He waved his hand. The wetland lizard hero behind him stepped forward immediately. He grabbed a strong and fat rooster weighing more than 10 pounds from a carriage. He twisted his neck directly. He broke the chicken's head alive, fluttering, as the rooster's wings frantically flapped, blood splattered and soaked into the pottery basin. In a moment, the dried dragon feces were soaked. In just a few breaths, the magic power around seemed to be attracted by the black hole and rushed into the dragon feces. An indescribable pressure escaped from the feces. Everyone felt a chill on their backs for no reason. It was like being stared at by some terrible abyss monster. Dragon feces. Bane, who took a few steps back and his legs were weak, cried out in shock. His eyes changed again. My lord can even get this kind of thing. Dragons are the top predators in this world. Dragons with pure blood can directly step into the extraordinary after old age. Anyone who has something to do with dragons, even if they are dragon descendants with mixed blood, has strong power. And in order to survive, the best way is to avoid danger. No one wants to get close to the dragon's might. This is tantamount to getting close to death. Lear nodded slightly and said nothing more. Let the army continue to march. The dragon's might can be spread 2 or 3 kilometers away. Some sensitive creatures can even sense it more than 10 kilometers away. The safety of the convoy has been greatly improved. On the 13th and 14th, after continuing to rush for 2 days, they passed through the control area and entered the warning area where the danger level soared. They were more than 200 kilometers away from Llewellyn City until this moment, and they officially stepped into the wilderness. Tonight, they set up camp. After dinner, Lear did not rush to sleep, but waited silently until late at night. Finally, the time on the panel reached the early morning of July 15th. The intelligence system in his mind quietly emerged with new information. The intelligence system has been cooled down, and the intelligence can be refreshed. Do you want to refresh it? Lear was refreshed. It's time for the third intelligence refresh. Refresh. The moment of confirmation, the intelligence system refreshed the current intelligence. 1. Go 20 kilometers forward. In a red leaf forest, you will encounter a group of 3 teams of hobgoblins ambushing. The most powerful leader has a level of 5. 1 star. 2. The chief political officer of the Grand Duke Loran's mansion is your father's comrade in arms, and the two sides have a deep friendship. 1 star. 3. Philena broke through level 17 a day ago. As the youngest archmage in the history of the Griffin Empire, her breakthrough was not publicized. At this time, she is collecting more kinds of roses, which is the opportunity for her next breakthrough. 2 stars. 4. Go along the road for 2 days. At noon on the 17th, a group of man-eating crows will pass by in the sky. They will attract a level 13 monster, the thunderstorm bird. Using 3 times the dragon feces can disperse the scavenger crows and avoid the thunderstorm bird. 2 stars. 5. A group of wild blood bandits composed of barbarians will appear in the area you pass through, the waterside reed field on the evening of the 19th. You must hide the dragon feces and rest for 3 hours to avoid it. 2 stars. 5 pieces of information, 2 1 star, and 3 2 star. Lear's eyes narrowed slightly and looked carefully. The first one is the sneak attack of the Earth Goblins. The Earth Goblins are a branch of the Goblin tribe. They are taller and crazier. However, the highest level of the opponent is only level 5, and there are only 3 teams. It is indeed only worthy of 1 star value. Even if the sneak attack is successful, it is difficult to cause any damage. The second one is a bit interesting. The chief political officer of the Grand Duke of Loran's mansion is the comrade in arms of the original body's father. The original body does not have this in his memory. It seems that the next time I return to Loran City, I have to visit him. This is a very good network of people, which cannot be wasted. The third one. Did Philena break through again? Level 17. The youngest great wizard of the Griffin Empire. Awesome. Even if he cheats, you can still feel that he is outstanding. A true daughter of heaven. The next breakthrough will be level 18. Wow, so awesome. She is only 24 years old. If she grows up a few years, she will become an extraordinary wizard. There is no suspense at all. And the information is also very interesting. Collect more roses to break through. The other party's talent is the Lord of Roses, which is obviously closely related. Look back to see if there are any roses in the wilderness, and send more back to her. Before it develops, this network is more precious than gold. Articles 4 and 5 are warnings of danger. From this, we can also see the ferocity of the wilderness. Carrion crows, thunderstorm birds, and the wilderness blood bandits composed of barbarians. Needless to say, they are all not easy to mess with. Without intelligence support, once you encounter them, the scene is terrifying. After Lear read it twice again, he felt more confident, relaxed his tension, and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, the lizardman guard woke him up, packed up his belongings, and set off again. At noon, after traveling about 20 kilometers, a large red leaf forest appeared in front of the convoy. The palm-sized bright red leaves fluttered in the wind, like a burning flame. Combined with the green vegetation around, it gave people a sense of vitality. But Lear's eyes became sharper. Haggis, I smell the breath of goblins. There are goblins ambushing in the red leaf forest. All troops are ready to fight. The armored wetland lizardman heard the words and immediately became excited. These swamp creatures were as well behaved as kittens in front of Lear. But in their bones, they are still bloodthirsty and brutal hunters. Lear left a squadron to guard the convoy, and he took Haggis and the remaining squadron to the red leaf forest. A team of 10, a squadron of 100, a battalion of 1,000, and a legion of 10,000. The military organization of this fantasy world is very concise and clear. As a lord who pioneered in the wilderness, blood and killing will be the main theme for a long time in the future. After living in the modern world for a long time, there is no chance to kill chickens all year round, let alone naked bloody fighting. The original body was just a descendant of a downtrodden noble who was struggling to survive in the slums. Although he often saw corpses soaked in stinky ditches, he had not experienced the cruelty of the battlefield. He needs to adapt to this crazy world, and he must adapt. Let this battle be the beginning. Lear's eyes were deep. Entering the red leaf forest, the wetland lizardman immediately became energetic. In the amber eyes, there was madness and brutality. The tip of the nose moved, and the eyes looked in one direction. Master, we found the hiding place of those dirty goblins. The sense of smell of the wetland lizardman may not be as sensitive as that of the hound, but it is definitely much stronger than that of humans. Lear nodded. Hags, you will lead the battle. He has two skills, Swamp Blessing and God's Remaining Power. God's Remaining Power is not a combat skill. Swamp Blessing is very powerful. It releases a life-giving energy that covers a 3*3 meter range, which can speed up the recovery of injuries and restore up to 20% of health points. The recovery effect of the swamp tribe's life is increased to 30%. Although it has no destructive power, it is a very powerful skill as a nurse. The hobgoblins only have 3 teams, but it is the first battle, and he doesn't want any accidents. After leaving a team to protect himself, Hags led the remaining 9 teams slowly towards the depths of the red leaf forest. These creatures, wearing cold armor and with ferocious eyes, began to hunt. Less than 200 meters ahead, Hags, a wetland lizardman who had just transformed into a 2-star hero, became excited. On a small hill, dozens of green-skinned figures were crawling. Below the hill was the passage in the woods. Goblin. A pair of pointed ears almost grew to the back of the head, and the mouth was like an open clamp, full of fangs. A triangular nose with a hook in front. Wide eyes with blue pupils. Stout body, almost all of them are over 1.75 meters tall. Looks quite strong. Compared with other goblins of the same race, it is a big guy. Goblin. Level Primary Knight, Level 4. Racial talent Brave and brave, blindly arrogant and proud, never admit defeat to anyone, sanity reduced by 60%, morale is constantly high. Skill Power Attack 1 star, raise the weapon in both hands, burst out all the power to attack the enemy, increase the damage by 20%, and have a chance to cause shock and paralysis effects. Evaluation Inferior life. These stinking lives, dare to play this trick. Want to sneak attack them is really looking for death. Haggis clenched the steel knife in his hand, his voice was cold. Kill. With a low roar, 9 teams of wetland lizardmen rushed out like arrows. The hobgoblins who were waiting for their prey to come heard the sound and turned their heads subconsciously. One after another, the ferocious lizardmen warriors were rushing fiercely. But these lives with unique racial talents were not afraid, but roared. Roaring and killing. It was like the wetland lizardmen warriors in armor were just lambs to be slaughtered. Haggis was furious when he saw that the enemy did not retreat but advanced. He felt that his dignity was trampled by the other party. Insects dared to provoke the dragon. He led the charge, swinging the steel knife violently. A hobgoblin in the front also roared and swung a wooden stick. At the moment of the collision, the steel knife cut the wooden stick with terrifying force, in the eyes of the hobgoblin in disbelief. It chopped directly on the shoulder, splitting half of the body. Bones broke, blood exploded. Scarlet scattered all over the ground. Kill instantly. Hags's anger was released a little, but he continued to slaughter with the craziest attitude. The master was still watching these scum from behind, they all deserved to die. The steel knife swung, and there was no need to mobilize the unique blood of the Night Path hero. With his own violence, he chopped the hobgoblins one by one. The wetland lizardmen warriors in the back saw that the situation was not good, so they quickly accelerated their pace. If they came later, these hobgoblins would be gone. Facing a group of crazy wetland lizardmen, the hobgoblins had no power to fight back at all. Even if he hit the wetland lizardmen with a wooden stick, it would only make the sound of armor clanging. It couldn't even break the defense. A one-sided massacre. Lear watched all this from the back. The battle lasted less than 2 minutes from the beginning to the end, and the 3 teams of hobgoblins were overwhelmed by the wetland lizardmen. No one survived. The strong smell of blood, the fragmented limbs and internal organs, the glaring blood, the scarlet earth and grass, everything was madly stimulating his nerves. Compared with the scene of the wetland lizardmen's heads exploding in the slave farm, it was 100 times stronger. Lear's heart trembled, but his eyes did not avoid the battlefield. He stepped into the blood with a firm gaze, passed through the limbs and fragments all over the ground, and came to the bloody hags. He patted the other's shoulder with appreciation. Well done, hags. The voice was a little hoarse, but full of determination. Turning his head, he looked at the creepy battlefield and the limbs all over the ground. His eyes became deep. This is just the beginning. War and killing will also develop with the construction of the territory and continue to emerge. Hags inexplicably felt that his master seemed to have undergone some strange changes. His temperament became sharper, and looking into his eyes, he inexplicably felt a little palpitation. A not-so-intense battle came to an end, and it also kicked off the opening of the wilderness. After Lear collected his thoughts, he waved his hand and asked hags to lead people to clean up the battlefield. But poor goblins still live in the wilderness, and there is really no money. After searching once, nothing was found, so they had to give up. Rejoin the team. Let the two teams of lizardmen continue to explore the way ahead, and Lear led the main force to keep a certain distance. Prevent any accidents from happening again. However, the pressure emitted by the two-star dragon dung is fierce enough. Even though they have gone deep into the wilderness, they have not encountered any monster sneak attacks. If it weren't for the fact that the racial talents of the goblins were too strange, these lives might not dare to approach the dragon's power. Continue to move forward. The next day, July 17th. When the convoy set out in the early morning, Lear ordered to soak 3 portions of dragon dung. At noon, the amount was increased to 4 portions. Each portion of dragon dung can emit 5 days of dragon power, and then it will quickly dissipate. This 10+ kilograms of dragon feces is enough to get to the swamp. The surging dragon power emitted by the 4 feces frightened the timid swamp people. Even though they knew it was just dragon feces, they still felt a strong sense of uneasiness. From time to time, they had to turn their heads to look at the pottery basin behind them. Even the ferocious lizard people were obviously restless at this moment. The dragon, the life at the top of the food chain, has long been horrible in the souls of ordinary life. Bane, the timid swamp hero, was restless and somewhat puzzled by Lear's orders, but he dared not say much. He could only suppress his doubts and move forward fearfully. Ah, ah, ah. At noon, a series of shrill voices came from the horizon. Lear looked up and his heart skipped a beat. Countless crows appeared in his sight. Half an arm long, black all over, with long beaks. There were so many that a dark tide was formed, covering the sky. Level 5, Carrion Crows. The convoy suddenly became nervous. The swamp people were shaking with fear, and they wanted to hide under the wheels. The wetland lizard man drew out the steel knife in his hand, his eyes were full of ferocity, and he was ready for a bloody battle. But when everyone was under great pressure, the monster black tide in the sky approached the convoy 1,000 meters away, as if it had hit an invisible mountain, and suddenly turned around and flew to the other side. It narrowly avoided the convoy. Boom! A dazzling lightning burst out from the group of carrion crows. In an instant, dozens of crows fell from the air with black smoke all over their bodies. Then the terrifying thunder exploded. This seemed to have opened the prelude. Silver dragon lightning danced wildly. In the black tide, dazzling thunder continued to flash. The deafening thunder made people feel heartbroken. Lear looked intently, and saw a group of giant birds with a wingspan of 7 or 8 meters and covered in lightning running rampant among the scavenging crows. They preyed on these level 5 lives recklessly. Thunderstorm birds, level 13. There were more than 100 of them. The most powerful Griffin Legion in Loran City, its average level was only level 12. Is this the wilderness? A reckless massacre unfolded in midair. The thunderstorm birds controlled the thunder and slaughtered the crows at will, and the air was filled with the smell of burnt hair. If the flock of birds did not avoid them, even if the fierce thunderstorm birds were not targeting them, the terrifying thunder aftermath would have an impact on the convoy. Flying life, very fast. After several hunts, the scavenging crows sped up in the screams of fear. Gradually disappeared from sight. In the early morning, I was a little puzzled as to why Lear ordered to increase the dragon feces several times. Bane's face changed obviously at this moment. The eyes looking at Lear were full of heat. The adults seemed to have some extraordinary power. They can predict the danger. This is a God-given skill in the wilderness. This sudden encounter not only did not make him feel uneasy, but his confidence in the future soared. In order to prevent accidents, after the crows left, Lear immediately asked the army to speed up. After walking more than 10 miles, they returned to normal speed. In the wilderness full of dangers, the biggest obstacle is not only the terrible monsters and wilderness life, but also the difficult road. It's all thanks to the majestic horses in the fantasy world, like a small truck with full horsepower, which can force the carriage to go. Otherwise, just rushing on the road can make people collapse. The long journey is boring and tasteless. After 2 days of rushing on the road, near the afternoon of the 19th, Lear suddenly ordered the lizardmen to deal with the dragon feces, and then set up camp in a tall grass. No one understands why they stopped so early today. When Lear ordered everyone to be silent and the horses were tied up, they realized something. Everyone tried to lower their breathing. Until dusk, the ground suddenly trembled, and it seemed that a large number of cavalry passed by in another direction. The vibration was not big, but the distance was only about 2 or 3 kilometers. If the dragon feces had not been destroyed, it would definitely attract the attention of the other party. Although I don't know who it is definitely not easy to mess with a large number of cavalry in the wilderness. Only Lear knows what they have avoided. The wilderness blood bandits. This is a caravan that plunders the lords who are pioneering in the wilderness. They are extremely cruel and terrible. Where they passed, there were only blood and corpses. Barbarians are the main source of wilderness bandits. These races, who grew up in the wilderness and were full of tyranny and killing, like to plunder the most. No wonder no one would choose to open up the wilderness 500 kilometers away. A wilderness banditry could destroy a lord who had just stepped into the wilderness. Everyone came to open up the territory, not to die. After a crisis of destruction, Lear relaxed a little and sent the lizardmen out to guard, so that everyone could rest peacefully. Traveling during the day and sleeping at night is the daily routine of traveling. At night, the danger of the wilderness increases significantly, and one can only act with caution. But Lear did not fall asleep, because the early morning was the 20th, and the intelligence was refreshed again. Traveling in the wilderness is full of unknown dangers. For most pioneering lords, just traveling requires a lot of effort. Scouts even need to go out 20 or 30 miles to guard against danger, and they may be attacked by wilderness monsters at any time. But for Bane, it became a bit boring, and he just had to travel and travel every day. The dragon feces made most of the life dare not approach. From time to time, the great lord asked the army to speed up, rest on the spot, or hide in the dense forest and grass. Then wave after wave of danger was avoided quietly. This made the swamp man more and more determined that his lord must have a strong sense of crisis. Even, it is possible to have the power to predict the future. The latter is purely his imagination, but the former is what he has determined during the journey for more than half a month. Lear's position in his heart has increased at an exaggerated speed. In just more than half a month, it has been filled with madness and passion. Following the strong is the nature of all life in the world of Nor. In the wilderness, this characteristic is magnified to the extreme. It's not just him, all the swamp people and wetland lizard people are like this. At noon on August 4th, the team stopped to rest. Since setting off on July 12th, until today, Lear has been traveling in the wilderness for a full 22 days. Traveling during the day and resting at night. On the magic map, they are only 30 kilometers away from their destination, the mud swamp. Looking at the hexagram pattern shining so close, Lear's mood gradually became high. At noon today, he will be able to reach his own territory. Cultivating land, building cities, and gathering power will all start from here. Speed up, we will reach the territory before sunset. When everyone heard this, their morale soared. The speed of travel was involuntarily increased. As the sun gradually sank into the ground, but the temperature was still hot, suddenly a cool breeze blew from the front, and the body suddenly became comfortable. Lear was refreshed. Look up. At the end of the sight, a curved rainbow of 7 colors hangs in the sky, and the sunset glow in the sky is as colorful as fire, reflecting each other with the rainbow, which is magnificent. You can also see the water vapor evaporating upwards due to the high temperature. At the same time, on the magic map, his bright spot is completely integrated with the hexagram pattern. The mud swamp has arrived. Finally we're here. I feel the swamp calling me. Is this where we live from now on? This seems to be bigger than the swamp we lived in before. Praise the goddess. ... Everyone was excited, the swamp people were dancing, and the wetland lizard people were also excited. After more than half a month of long journey, crossing thousands of miles in the wilderness, and going through many hardships, they finally arrived at the destination safely. The excitement in his heart was beyond words, and all emotions were vented. Lear was also in high spirits at this moment. Finally, we're here. His territory, the place where everything started. At this moment, the swamp godhead floating in the magic seed in his mind suddenly bloomed with a faint luster. Lear subconsciously looked at the swamp that was blocked by the grass, and could vaguely feel that something he desperately wanted was sleeping in that land. Authority. It was like a traveler in the desert, longing for clean water. My lord, Bane interrupted his thoughts with a somewhat excited tone. The swampman hero said excitedly. There is plenty of water vapor here, and there must be a giant water vein in the swamp. For the swampmen, the swamp is their real home. The swamp they lived in before was forced to leave because the water veins dried up and the swamp died, which led to the capture of the slave team. The giant water vein is the guarantee of the existence of the swamp. There is a lot to do in the future. Lear gathered his mind and said in a brisk tone. I hope so. Everyone take a night's rest and explore the swamp tomorrow. He had to think carefully about the specific location of the territory and how to develop it next. The most important thing is that today is August 4th, and in the early morning, it is time for another intelligence refresh. In the past few days of rushing on the road, on the 20th, 25th, and 30th, the intelligence was refreshed 3 times, but these intelligences were all warnings without exception, predicting the threats ahead. Relying on intelligence, he avoided several rounds of monsters that could destroy the convoy. Finally arrived at this muddy swamp thousands of kilometers away from Loran City. It seemed like a safe journey, but only he knew how great the risks he had experienced for more than half a month were. Set up camp, make a fire and cook. After dinner, Lear walked out of the tent. A crescent moon was like a hook in the sky, emitting white light. The heat in the air gradually dissipated, and the freshness came. Lear's mood also relaxed for a rare time, enjoying the night breeze comfortably. He saw hags who had just arranged the night guard. Seeing the hero he had cultivated with his own hands, he waved his hand and asked him to sit on the grass beside him. Hags sat down cautiously with some excitement. Master. Lear looked at the other person's expression and said softly. Hags, I haven't asked you yet, where was your previous home? Hags was stunned, with a little dim in his eyes. Master, the swamp we live in was occupied by a group of orcs a long time ago. I was forced to wander in the wilderness with my people. In a conflict with snake people, I was captured by passing humans. The word home was very strange in his eyes. This is also the way home for most of the wilderness life. The strong ones occupy a territory and can even build a city. Weak races can only wander in the wilderness. After saying this, Haggis hesitated. But after meeting you, I found the real meaning of existence. His eyes lit up. It is our honor to follow you in this life. Lear gave them the meaning of existence, letting them know who they are fighting for and why they are fighting. These things seem worthless, but they are of great significance to him. Hearing the heartfelt words of this lizard hero, Lear was also touched. Inexplicably, I felt that there was less distance between me and this world. Reached out and patted the other person's shoulder. From now on, this is our home. Haggis was stunned, wanting to say something, but didn't know what to say. In the end, he could only nod his head and hum. Inexplicably, I felt a long-lost warmth in my heart. It seems that everything is unspoken. After staying on the grass until the early morning, the moment the time jumped from August 4th to August 5th, the intelligence system page in Lear's mind changed again. The intelligence system has cooled down and the information can be refreshed. Do you want to refresh? He was refreshed, and his eyes showed some excitement and expectation. Refresh. The next second after the selection, 5 pieces of information were refreshed in sequence. 1. In the center of the swamp, there is a flat land with a diameter of 2 kilometers. It is the best area to build a territory. There is a winding path on the right that leads directly to the central flat land. If you encounter any fork in the road, just go left. 2 stars. 2. Once the swamp authority is activated, it will cause huge magic fluctuations. When you have complete control of the authority, please do not step out of the swamp. 2 stars. 3. After arriving at the center of the mud swamp, walk 10 kilometers southeast. There is a starry sky vine. These vines are tougher than steel ropes and are light in texture. They are very suitable for building houses in the swamp. 2 stars. 4. 30 kilometers north of the central area, there lives a group of rodent centaurs, with an average level of 8 and a maximum level of 10, and the number exceeds 500. 3 stars. 5. Under the territory occupied by the rodent centaurs, there grows a 1-star magic plant, blue heart mud fruit. 3 stars. Lear's mood immediately soared. The information refreshed this time all started at 2 stars, and there were 2 3-star information. This is the highest value in so many days. Take a deep breath, calm down, and start reading from the first article. Article 1 is about the territory construction site. In the center of the swamp, there is an open space with a diameter of 2 kilometers, suitable for building a territory. And the path to the center of the swamp is also given. With this information, you can save a lot of trouble. Very good. Item 2 is about activating the authority of the swamp. But where the authority lies and what form it takes is still a question. He could only write this down first and then operate it after gaining authority. The third piece of information is very interesting: starry sky vines. This was the first time he had heard of this plant. The swamp has a special terrain, and it is easy to go wrong when building houses and buildings like ordinary land. Humid water vapor and prone to subsidence terrain are huge obstacles. Now we have the materials to build the territory. Good things must be obtained. The fourth piece of information, worth 3 stars. 30 kilometers north of the central area, there are more than 500 rodent centaurs living. The average level is 8, and the highest level is 10. They are all mid-level knights. Lear immediately felt the pressure. The most powerful being in hand at the moment, Haggis, is only level 7. Although it is a heroic unit, it is impossible for one person to deal with 500 rodent centaurs. It is unrealistic. Unless it's a level 17 top powerhouse like Philina. Its 3-star value speaks volumes. The last piece of information is very meaningful. Under the rodent centaur, there is a magical plant, blue heart mud fruit. This magical plant has its own memory and is a rare magical food that can be directly eaten as a staple food. It's much worse than nose rice, but it only takes half a kilogram to keep a strong orc warrior full for a whole day. And the yield is very large, it can mature in 2 months. However, this kind of magical plant only grows in humid areas. It is difficult to cultivate and cannot be cultivated on a large scale. It has always been monopolized by the great nobles. If you can get it, the food problem will be solved. This is a strategic treasure related to the territory's survival and future development. The growing conditions required by the blue heart mud fruit are nothing to a swamp. The chosen plant. The value of 3 stars is indeed sufficient. But if you want to get this magical plant with great potential, you must first deal with the threat of the rodent centaur. Lear slowly fell asleep in deep thought. August 5th, early morning. Lear got up early, checked the amount of dragon feces, and looked at the swamp ahead. Mud, muddy water, carrion, weeds, moss, and single trees all fit in with the impression of swamps described by troubadours. Low weeds grow in the muddy water. Bubbles pop up from time to time in a few murky pools of dead water. Skeletons of unknown creatures can be seen half exposed on the water. The air is filled with the rotten smell of silt, and moss wraps the dry and rotten wood, covering it with a thick layer of green. A faint mist floated in the air, making it impossible to see clearly. A few sparse giant trees can be seen faintly through the fog, but they are not a forest. The silt swamp stretches for hundreds of kilometers and is home to countless swamp life forms. This is also a terrible place where danger and death coexist. The most impressive thing is the swamp that can swallow everything. This is a natural trap. If you take a wrong step, you will be swallowed by the mud and water. In addition, the humid environment breeds countless venomous mosquitoes and venomous snakes. Ordinary people would find it difficult to move even if they stepped into it. Above the mud, a crooked path extends into the mist. Lear took a deep breath and ordered Haggis to lead 5 teams of wetland lizardmen to patrol the front. Strive to eliminate all dangers. Then let the team set foot on the trail. The road is narrow and the convoy is inevitably stretched. The swamp people and the wetland lizard people are both swamp life forms. After entering the swamp, their energy and spirit have been significantly improved. The humid air, turbid mud pools, overgrown weeds, trees, and vines, and the strange environment in the swamp made them feel safe. This is even more true for Lear. After entering the swamp, he could feel that the entire swamp was cheering for joy. Welcoming his arrival, he took a deep look at the wetland, his eyes as bright as stars. Your god is back. Follow the winding swamp path inward. After a while, the mist began to dissipate. After entering the swamp, towering trees began to appear. Although they were sparse, they spread endlessly. Together with the tall grass, they blocked the sight, and the sight distance was only 100 or 200 meters away. The swamp pool exudes a faint rotten smell, and fish tails slap on the turbid water from time to time, causing ripples. There are many mosquitoes and snakes in the swamp, which are even more dangerous than the swamp monster. They are all pervasive and venomous mosquito snakes. Because of the giant dragon's excrement, they had already fled in panic and did not have much impact on them. After marching like this for about 20 minutes, a long roar suddenly came from ahead. It's Hags's voice. Warn of enemy attack. Lear's pupils shrank sharply, and he waved his hand to order the team to stop moving forward. Let 5 teams of wetland lizardman warriors guard, and the rest of the army press forward. After turning 2 corners, the view broadened. A low, open wetland with murky water half soaked in short grass. A few big trees stood alone in the middle of the wetland, green and hazy. Haggis, a level 7 hero, was leading 5 teams of wetland lizardmen, roaring and fighting with a steady stream of monsters coming from behind on a hill about 10 meters high and covered with weeds. He is about 1.2 meters tall, like a half-grown child. It has a pointed mouth, 2 sharp teeth protruding from the lips, and 4 long beards on the sides of the mouth that almost snake to the back of the head. Huge ears and crazy eyes. The body looks like an enlarged version of a mouse, but it walks upright. The claws were as sharp as daggers, reflecting the cold light in the morning sun. Kelder. Level 3. Potential 1 star. Racial talent Death Plague, which carries deadly germs. After damaging the enemy will be infected with the plague. Skill Bite 1 star, bites the enemy with sharp teeth, causing piercing damage. Evaluation Life from the underground, don't be scratched by their sharp teeth. Level 3 Wild Monster. Lear's eyes narrowed slightly. The level is not high, but there are too many. There seems to be their nest in the hill behind. In this moment, the number of people gathered outside has exceeded 4 squadrons, and they are still coming out continuously. A large area of darkness. Even though the combat effectiveness of the wetland lizardmen is much higher than that of their opponent, their exaggerated numbers make them look like rocks struck by seawater. It may be destroyed at any time. Lear immediately ordered, "Fight in and meet Haggis." The wetland lizard warrior didn't hesitate at all. He clenched his steel knife and roared into the dense crowd of Kelder rats. The steel knife waved, poof. The ratman without armor protection was directly cut into pieces. Blood spurted out wildly, but the ferocious rat man had no intention of retreating. The smell of blood stimulated the cruelty in his heart. He divided into 2 groups and rushed towards the 2 groups of people. It pounces on it, bites it like crazy while holding it. The sharp rodents were like daggers, piercing the armor and tearing the scales. The number of ratmen was so exaggerated that even if the steel knives formed an entire column, they could not be completely blocked. The dozen or so wetland lizardmen at the front were the first to be attacked. The crazy ratmen lay on their bodies and bit hard at the gaps in their armor. Click. The crisp sound of bones breaking can be heard. The furious swamp lizard man swung the steel knife fiercely, and poof, directly cut off the opponent's head. But what is chilling is that even if they have been beheaded, the ferocious rat head still bites their bodies and does not let go. Even the intensity is getting stronger and stronger. The terrifying bite force caused the arms of many warriors in front to be bitten through. But after being injured, the wetland lizardman also became crazy, and his amber eyes turned scarlet. He roared and charged into it. The car overturned and a large group of ratmen in front merged with Haggis. At this moment, there are 15 teams of wetland lizard warriors on the battlefield. But the number of Kelder ratmen increased from 4 squadrons to 7 squadrons. A sea of rats formed in the swamp. Moreover, new ratmen are constantly emerging from the overgrown hills behind. The opponent's body is only 1.2 meters tall, his strength is average, and his defense is almost non-existent. But the abnormality lies in the opponent's sharp rodent incisors, which are extremely lethal. Even 1-star armor can be shattered by it. The scales of the wetland lizardman will be directly penetrated by it. Although each bite costs a life, the number is too many. Life for injury. These warorots didn't take death seriously at all. Looking at the ferocious, fearless rat man, Lear, who was in the center of the military formation, felt the ferocity of the swamp for the first time. The Keld rat man is in a state of madness, and the skill of God's remaining power cannot subdue a life in this state. Taking a deep breath, his gaze became dangerous. If you can't conquer them, then, slaughter them all. Kill. Magic power surges through his body. A ray of light blue light spanned the space and fell into the bodies of several severely injured wetland lizard warriors in front. Their injuries healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Swamp Gift 1 star, Congrow casts a stream of energy containing vitality, covering a 3*3 meter area, which can speed up injury recovery and can restore up to 20% of the health value. The recovery effect of the cast on the Swamp Clan's life is increased to 30%. He has no damaging skills, but he has powerful healing skills. This is definitely the magic skill that the warriors in the front need the most. After a few treatments, the injured wetland lizard warriors became fierce again. Fearless. Fighting with the opponent in the most brutal manner, the battlefield has become a meat grinder. Steel knives slashed, claws slaughtered. Face-to-face fighting, every knife pierced the bone, the bloody flesh was blurred, and the blood-bursting scene made people feel cold in their hearts. But at this moment, under the battlefield atmosphere, no one felt fear. Everything was blurred in the blood, and there was only one thought. Kill. Kill the fools on the opposite side. The low grass beach and the swamp with rolling water plants were now scarlet. The rotten smell of muddy water and the stench of blood mixed together at this moment, making people feel sick. As a hero unit, Hags has now erupted with unimaginable combat power. There is a faint scarlet energy on his body, burning the body surface like a flame. Chi and blood. Thousands of points of blood and chi added to Hags's destructive power. Almost single-handedly, he blocked the Keld ratman in one direction. Kill one with one knife. The power of the hero was best demonstrated at this moment. But the ferocious and crazy Keld ratman used the timeless human wave tactics to suppress this wetland lizard man hero. The real ants bite the elephant to death. A rough estimate shows that the ratmen in front of him have exceeded a battalion, over 1,000. The number of casualties is even more difficult to count. Lear did not kill a ratman himself. But when he, who has a powerful healing skill, sat in the center, the rhythm of the whole battle changed. The effect of the human wave tactic of exchanging life for injury was suppressed to the freezing point. The scars left on the wetland lizardman warriors by the death and injury of 4 or 5 Keld ratmen were healed in the blink of an eye. The opponent's brutal sacrifice did not achieve the expected results. 15 teams, 150 people. With extremely high efficiency, they killed more than 3,000 Keld ratmen. Finally, after another attack was chopped off by a steel knife, a shrill rat squeak sounded from the hill behind. 5 or 6 squadrons of Keld ratmen retreated like a tide, all disappearing in the hill behind. Only corpses and body parts were left all over the ground. The heavy blood even made the swamp soil unable to see its original color. Lear stood on the battlefield, staring at the horrifying scene indifferently, and slowly exhaled. The blood and body parts did not make his heart tremble again. Iron, blood and killing were forging a lord suitable for survival in the wilderness. Before he could make any move, the intelligence system in his mind suddenly flashed. You commanded the army to kill 3,692 Keld ratmen, achieved a brilliant victory, and obtained an additional intelligence. The swamp godhead has the ability to extract the essence of life force. As long as you are in the swamp, you can use the power of the godhead to extract the essence of the life you executed. Note: the life essence can promote the evolution of the swamp tribe's life, break the potential limit, and complete the transformation. The upper limit of your subordinates' potential can now be improved to 2 stars. You need to control the authority of the swamp to increase the upper limit. Lear's breath trembled, and his eyes suddenly became hot. I didn't expect to get an unexpected reward. Another valuable piece of information. In the swamp, you can use the divine power to extract the essence of life. And these life essences can break the potential limit. Although the current upper limit is only 2 stars of potential, it still makes Lear very excited. What is the most lacking now? Sufficient military force. And the only force that can be mobilized is the wetland lizardmen. But these 1-star potential warriors have reached the upper limit of level 6. Turning around and looking at the blood-stained black armor around him, the warriors who were full of bloodthirsty and brutal aura. His eyes lit up. Gather all the bodies of these ratmen together. The order was issued, and the wetland lizardmen who had left the battle immediately took action. At this moment, Haggis came over from the haystack in the distance, carrying a dying Keld ratman. Master, this is a newly discovered hybrid. The amber pupils had a bit of lingering murderous intent. There is no need to give a good face to the enemy. Lear looked at the panting, bloody Keld ratman, his eyes slightly condensed. Where are you from? The ratman grinned, blood kept flowing from the corner of his mouth, and the sound was like a windmill. The Great Queen will feed all of you to the rat cubs. This area is the territory of our Kokolo clan. Surface people, you are courting death. Kokolo clan, your territory. Hag's eyes turned cold, and he creaked. The hand holding the other's neck tightened a little. A bunch of lowly fools dare to peek at my lord's land. The Kokolo clan is the ruler of the Dark Mountains. Surface people, you will never imagine what kind of existence you have provoked. The voice of the Keld ratman was sharp, and his attitude was still crazy. Dark Mountains, surface people, these 2 keywords made Lear's eyes condense. The Dark Mountains are a famous mountain range in the underground world. There is actually a passage to the underground world in the swamp. Lear's thoughts turned, and he said slowly, cursing is just the wailing of the weak. Keld ratman, you dare to peek at the surface. We are just an outpost to explore. Wait, when Her Majesty the Queen kills the red dragon that is about to die of old age, this place will become the paradise of the Kokolo clan, and you can't escape. As the voice fell, his breathing became rapid, and then his body stiffened, his eyes lost focus, and his life breath suddenly disappeared. Dead. Hags's face was a little ugly, and he twisted violently. He tore off the other party's head directly and smashed it into the muddy water in the distance, splashing a large amount of water. He was actually threatened by this sewer fool. Lear was not angry, and looked around calmly. Find a few more alive to question. Hags took action immediately and found 4 seriously injured Keld ratmen. After a round of interrogation, the final confessions confirmed each other. What the other party said was true. These Keld ratmen actually came from the underground world. But unlike the information that the ratmen said at the beginning, the Kokolo clan has not yet reached out to the surface. They are just scouts who are exploring the way and accidentally discovered the passage to the surface. The message has not been passed back yet. And the journey to the underground took them 7 days, and it took some time to reach the underground. The Kokolo clan is indeed strong, and the other party is preparing to hunt a red dragon that is about to die of old age. But that requires the whole clan's strength. Even if the red dragon is killed, it will take some time to recuperate and will not pay attention to the surface in a short time. After getting the confirmed news, Lear was relieved. Now that he has just arrived at the silt swamp, he is not willing to face these brutal enemies so soon. No matter how powerful the potential is, it takes time to realize it. What he lacks most now is time. In the gap between his interrogation, the wetland lizardmen piled up the corpses fished out of the scarlet mud water into a small hill. More than 3,000 hideous corpses piled together look quite visually impactful. Build Jingguan. In the past half-month, Lear, who had experienced dozens of conflicts and fights, has gradually grown up. Such a bloody scene, although chilling, is not enough to shake his heart. You must get used to it. The weak have no right to survive in this world. Take a deep breath and try to inject mental power into the broken blue godhead in your mind. Look at the towering pile of corpses and slowly stretch out your right hand. The magic power is like the flame burning on your body, suddenly soaring. It surges directly and erodes the pile of corpses in front. The next moment, the light blue flame begins to burn on the corpse. One after another, the scarlet essence of life is extracted, floating in the air, and gathering into a river. Lear's mind moved. Those scarlet energies slowly spread out like river water and poured into the bodies of the wetland lizardmen around. The wetland lizardmen only felt that some wonderful changes had taken place in their bodies. The muscles became thicker, the bones became stronger, and the tendons gradually became tougher. They are getting stronger. When the amber pupils looked at Lear, they became hot and crazy again. The master is rewarding them with power. The pile of corpses gradually shrank, and finally, like a dried corpse that had been weathered for thousands of years, it broke directly with a crack. It turned into scum all over the ground, submerged in scarlet muddy water. After the energy of the corpse was drained, the rapidly growing aura of the wetland lizard man returned to calm. Lear looked at the wetland lizard man beside him with some curiosity. On its properties panel, an additional status bar appears behind the potential bar. Potential: 1-star evolution level, 50%. The evolution level only needs to reach the full limit, and the potential can exceed 2 stars. Will the level cap also be increased? The life essence of more than 3,000 Keld Radman has allowed these 15 teams of wetland lizardmen to reach half of their evolutionary level. In other words, if you spend more than 3,000, you can achieve transformation. Not bad, very good. Lear was in a good mood. Gods are indeed the ultimate beings in this world. He only has a small amount of power, but he is already so extraordinary. If one could completely control the Godhead, one cannot imagine how powerful it would be. But it's a pity that the current maximum potential that can be improved is only 2 stars. Haggis, a 2-star hero, has not changed. After calming down, Lear asked the wetland lizardmen to search, especially the passage where the rat men fled. However, as the interrogation information said, the passage leading to the underground world is winding and rugged, and the wetland lizard people cannot enter at all. I can only write down this location on the magic map and explore it later. The underground world, the dark mountains, the Keld Skaven, the red dragon who dies of old age, the Skaven queen. There was a sense of mystery in these, giving him a desire to explore clearly. Give him a certain amount of time to develop. You may not know who the prey will be. Organize the team and start again. The winding path passes through swamps, mire, trees, and grass. After traveling for 2 or 3 kilometers, 4 forks appeared in front of us, leading to different directions. Lear waved his hand and signaled to march to the far left. Over the past half-month, he has established absolute prestige among the group. Even if it is unreasonable, no one will question it. Even many people in the mire almost regard Lear as the son of God who can listen to the will of the gods. The dragon excrement dispersed most of the danger, and the speed began to increase. At noon, they had traveled 20 kilometers, but at this moment, Lear suddenly waved his hand and asked everyone to stop. The tone was somewhat solemn. Destroy the dragon excrement immediately, everyone get down. Bane, who was behind, didn't think much and immediately poured a large amount of water into the pottery basin. After the blood-soaked dragon feces was soaked in water, it dimmed like a light bulb that had lost its power. The power of the dragon is gone. A moment later, when the crowd was confused. Roar! A low roar sounded in the air. Looking up, a terrifying life with a wingspan of more than 20 meters, like an ancient behemoth, was passing through the air. Casts a huge shadow. It was a giant flying dragon with thick legs. The ferocious dragon head is more terrifying than the dragons on the reliefs and murals in the city. The gray dragon's skin is like the bark of a 1,000-year-old tree, rugged and full of toughness. What's even more terrifying is the coercion it exudes, which is the power in the superior life bloodline, like a mountain pressing down on its head. Wyvern. Level. 16. Potential. 4 stars. Question mark question mark question mark. Question mark question mark question mark. The upper limit of 4-star potential is level 15, but this flying dragon actually has a level of 16. The other party has broken the upper limit. Lear's eyes became extremely sharp. Just looking at it from a distance, I felt the pressure that penetrated my soul. Everyone in the team didn't dare to breathe. The bog man's 2 buttocks were fighting, and even some of his crotches were soaked. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying flying dragon disappeared without a trace, but no one had recovered yet. Immersed in that terrible pressure, Lear let out a long breath. After entering the swamp, his perception was magnified by the swamp 10 times as he integrated into the Godhead. After feeling uneasy in his heart, he decisively ordered the disposal of the dragon's feces. If this bipedal flying dragon is discovered, I am afraid that a great terror will happen in an instant. The inner vigilance suddenly reached its peak at this time. In the dangerous wilderness, no one can tell when the next danger will come. He must use the intelligence system, use the Godhead, and use all the power at his disposal to make himself stronger as soon as possible. Flying dragon, sooner or later I will make you crawl under my feet. After this shock, my heart became firm again. Re-soak in dragon excrement. Let's go. After these two encounters, everyone's inner vigilance was raised to the highest level. Lear continued to send more people, and up to 5 teams of wetland lizardmen were exploring the way ahead. Wetland lizardmen are swamp creatures, and it is instinctive for them to explore and travel in the swamp. After encountering the flying dragon on the road ahead suddenly became smooth. There was no obstacle on the way. This rather abnormal scene made Lear frown a little. Bane seemed to have noticed his emotions, and the swamp hero whispered, "Sir, this wyvern has extremely pure blood, and its level is probably above level 15. Its dragon power is not inferior to that of an ordinary adult dragon, and it will cause great shock and fright wherever it passes. The swamp creatures in this area are probably hiding at the moment, or have fled here for a short time. But at most half a day, they will return one after another, and we need to hurry up." Lear nodded and looked at the swamp hero with algae-green pupils curiously. "Are you familiar with wyverns?" Bane's eyes showed some memories, nodded, and shook his head. "We once got a wyvern cub and wanted to cultivate it. But the other party needed too many resources, so we were forced to give up in the end." The look in his eyes was full of bitterness. Who can understand the unwillingness and helplessness of getting a treasure but not having the strength to control it? How can such a good treasure be obtained? Lucky, but unfortunately the strength is a little poor. Lear patted the other party on the shoulder. "There will be a future." No more words, urging the team to speed up. Try to reach the destination before the remaining power of the wyvern dissipates. After the order was issued, everyone worked hard to hurry on, and the speed of travel suddenly increased. Twist after turn, fork roads, muddy roads, haystacks, dense forests, and almost all kinds of complex terrain appeared in front of them. But everyone was surprised to find that Lear could choose the right route every time. "Will not get lost, no need to turn back. It's like having the ability to predict the future." Bane watched from behind, his eyes became more and more fanatical. "My lord, you must be the chosen son favored by the gods." After continuing to hurry on, the sun gradually moved westward, and after crossing a muddy grass road, the view suddenly became wider. In front of him was a low grassland that was not higher than the instep, which was very spacious, and the edge could only be seen when the view was far away. In the center, there were a few sparse trees growing. The green grass was about 1 meter above the water, and the swamp mud and water flowed slowly around. The verdant and vibrant picture gave people a feeling of peace and tranquility. "We're here." Everyone was excited at this moment. After more than 20 days, thousands of kilometers, resting at night and traveling during the day, we finally arrived at the territory, our future home. While everyone was excited, Hags came to Lear's side with a gloomy face. He pointed to the more than 10 sparse trees in the middle of the front with a height of more than 15 meters and dense crowns. "Master, those are not trees, they are swamp tree people." Lear's eyes condensed slightly and he looked up. The gray trunks were rugged, with large patches of moss growing on them. The branches were thick, the green leaves fluttered in the wind, and some yellow leaves fell from time to time. From the outside, there was no difference, but after the perception was extended, one could immediately feel the vigorous life of these trees burning like a furnace. Swamp Treeman. Level 9. Potential 3 stars, level cap 12. Racial talent, son of the earth, rooted in the earth, defense increased by 50%, can continuously absorb the power of the earth to recover. Skills, root binding, 2 stars, bind the enemy with roots, with paralysis characteristics. Branch whip, 2 stars, whip the enemy with branches, causing an additional 40% damage. Evaluation, Swamp Treeman has strong combat power, but cannot move before reaching level 10. 3-star potential, level 9 Swamp Treeman. Master, please give the order. Hag's eyes were firm. As long as Lear gave the order, he would lead the charge. No matter if there was a treeman or a dragon in front. Lear shook his head slowly. Although the level was only 3 levels higher than the wetland lizardman, the combat power was more than twice that of the wetland lizardman. The price to pay for being tough is too heavy. No need to bring people with me, he said as he slowly stepped forward. When he was about 50 meters away, Lear stopped, staring at the giant trees that were more than 15 meters high. There were 12 trees in total. The swamp tree man had a fatal flaw that he could not move. Although he lost the ability to move, he gained abnormal standing and shooting strength. In the absence of long-range means, it would definitely cost a lot to remove these 12 swamp tree men. Fighting with the tree man. The opponent's branches, which were thicker than the steering wheel, swept down, and I am afraid that they could directly smash the wetland lizard man. Aware of the arrival of outsiders, the big tree in front shook its branches. A burst of fallen leaves floated down, and ugly faces appeared on the thick, mossy gray trunks. The mouth opened and made a sound as deep as thunder. Outsiders, this is not the place for you to come. Leave immediately. Ancient tree man language. Higher language, you don't need to know the other person's words to hear their meaning. Directly transmit information to the spirit. Lear stared at the tree man in the front, and before he spoke, Haggis got angry. Outsider, tree man, this is the territory of the master. You should kneel down and kowtow. The slow-tempered tree man was immediately angered by this. The face on the tree trunk became a little distorted, and he was about to start cursing. Suddenly, he felt an unspeakable and indescribable pressure surging from the human boy in front of him. There was a bit of fear on his face. The residual power of the gods, this magical skill can make subordinates submit forever and never betray. However, the premise is that the other party is in a poor state and cannot escape and dodge, and can only bear the majesty of the gods. If the other party is free and in good condition, it is easy to anger the other party. Even if the gods come to the world, there are still a large number of people who refuse to obey. It is not realistic to want to sweep the swamp with pressure alone. The real strength is still one's own strength. But the situation is different now. The swamp tree people can't move. They must resist the majesty of the swamp godhead. Even if it is just a broken godhead, even if the authority has not been activated. But the gods are still gods, far from being resisted by mortals. The other party can move, can escape from this area, and is not covered by the divine power, but the swamp tree people must bear it all. The 12 swamp tree people immediately felt their souls trembling, and wanted to crawl and kneel down to the person in front of them. The other party seemed to be the master who occupied their souls, an extremely majestic existence. No, you demon, don't even think about enslaving our souls. The swamp tree people immediately went crazy. Sizzle. The earth suddenly collapsed, and countless roots like steel whips tore the ground, dancing wildly like a mad dragon. Bang, bang, the roots whipped the ground, exploding mud and grass debris all over the sky. This terrible scene did not change Lear's face, and he still stared at the tree people calmly. If you want to enslave the other party, you have to defeat them completely. At this moment, the opportunity is special. The range of 30 meters is the area covered by the roots of the swamp tree man. Lear stood 50 meters away, and the other party could not cause him any harm. The mental power was constantly injected into the dark blue godhead, inspiring a more powerful divine power. The rolling pressure was stronger than the dragon power of the two-legged dragon. It surged out unscrupulously and pressed on the soul of the swamp tree man. The resentment and anger in his heart subsided a little after venting, and the soul gradually adapted to the feeling of surrender and submission. This made the swamp tree man panic. He began to beg for mercy loudly. But Lear ignored it and still maintained his divine power. Surrender or be destroyed. The soul seemed to be grasped by a giant hand, creaking. But the tree man was unwilling to surrender. No, demon, you will never enslave us. Never. Under the resolute resistance, the life fire of these stubborn tree men began to dim after a stalemate for half an hour. Lear's face turned pale. Maintaining the power for a long time was a huge drain on him. But this is the eagle training. Whoever can't bear it first will be eliminated. But now, the initiative is in his hands, and the time, place and people are all in his hands. What can you fight me with? The tree man in the front felt that his soul had been cracked. The desire to surrender in his heart had reached its peak, and the last rebellious psychology was completely wiped out in weakness. The branches slowly drooped, and the face on the trunk was a little afraid. Great Lord, the master of the swamp, I am willing to submit to you. With the surrender of a tree man, the remaining 11 tree men who had already been unable to support themselves also lowered their heads in a moment. Obeyed the soul and blood. Lear felt the respectful obedience from their souls, and his mental power surged out, easily leaving a mark in their souls. The pressure was dissipated, and the pale face recovered some blood. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Eagle, tamed. These 12 tree people were directly transformed into the first batch of guards of the territory. The original disadvantage instantly turned into an advantage. Hags, who witnessed all this, trembled in his heart. Such a powerful swamp tree man surrendered under the majesty of the master. There is no need to fight at all. This is his master. A powerful and fierce master. Bane was also very excited. The rolling divine power not only frightened the swamp tree man, but also made all the mud people tremble. Lear ignored the thoughts of the crowd and looked at the carriage. Send all the goods here. The territory will be built with this as the center. Bane, you go to explore the surroundings, determine the terrain, and plan the future territory construction. This mud hero can only be useful at this moment. Bane nodded excitedly, but in a moment he seemed to think of something and hesitated. My lord, what is the name of our territory? Lear said meaningfully. The city of Weak Dew. The city of Weak Dew. Bane was stunned at first, and then his eyes became extremely excited. The city of Weak Dew. But soon, the first war of the gods broke out, the god of the swamp fell, and the construction of the city of Welu was far away. The successor god of the swamp never built the holy city of the swamp again. From then on, the name of Welu city could only be heard in legends. This name is meaningful. They want to reproduce the glorious past of the swamp people. Reforge the broken sword. We will follow you wherever you look. Lear nodded slightly, without saying much. Let them go down to work, and he came to the front of the swamp tree man again. The roots of these big trees have been buried in the ground again, and there is only a mess on the grass. It takes time to nurture it again. Is there any enemy around here that can threaten our existence? The swamp tree man in the front said in a muffled voice. Master, up pointing arrow, there is a group of wandering smelly giants in the north, the number is unknown, right pointing arrow, there are dozens of two-headed ogres in the east. Smelly giants, two-headed ogres. Lear raised his eyebrows. How strong are they? The stinking giant monsters are around level 9 and often come to this area to hunt. The two-headed ogre arrived 3 months ago, and the average level is 10. His eyes narrowed slightly. There are no weaklings who can survive in the swamp. These are two threats that cannot be ignored, and the specific situation must be investigated. After asking for a while, the swamp tree man failed to provide more information. Although these level 9 tree men are not weak, their inability to move is too fatal, and they can only passively wait for others to approach. The hunting range of the stinking giant monsters and the two-headed ogre is relatively wide, so they can know the approximate location of the other party. For the others, he can only rely on him to explore. With the level 9 swamp tree men as the power to guard the home, plus 200 level 6 wetland lizard warriors wearing thick armor, there is no need to be too nervous. The majestic horses pulled the supplies to the center. Started to unload the goods. Tents were set up one by one, and all the supplies were moved inside. Looking at the busy crowd, Lear felt inexplicably touched. He will start from scratch on this open space and build his own territory. That feeling is quite wonderful. It's like playing a real-life farming game, but this feeling is incomparable to the game. Take a deep breath, reopen the intelligence system, and look at the 3 unfinished intelligence. 3. After arriving at the center of the mud swamp, walk 10 kilometers southeast, there is a star vine. These vines are tougher than steel ropes, and the texture is light, which is very suitable for building houses in the swamp. 2 stars. 4. 30 kilometers north of the central area, there lives a group of rodent centaurs, with an average level of 8, the highest level of 10, and a number of more than 500. 3 stars. 5. Under the territory occupied by the rodent centaurs, there grows a 1-star magic plant blue heart mud fruit. 3 stars. In addition to the stinking giant monsters and two-headed ogres mentioned by the swamp tree people, the rodent centaurs 30 kilometers north of Up Pointing Arrow also need to be vigilant. This is a high-level wild monster base. We have to wait until the potential and level of the wetland lizardmen are improved before we can try to explore and attack. While thinking, his eyes were on the third piece of information southeast, 10 kilometers away, starry sky vines. While thinking, Lear called Bane again. Do you know starry sky vines? The swamp hero thought for a moment and whispered. My lord, it is said that starry sky vines are as hard as steel and are very suitable for swamp growth. The most powerful swamp city, the Swamp City, used starry sky vines to build houses. He hesitated again. But after the Swamp City was destroyed, it is rare to see it, and even the legend is rare. Lear smiled. If we can get the starry sky vines, can you use them? When Bane heard this, his eyes lit up. My lord, is that true? He patted his chest and promised. Of course I can. That's the starry sky vine. The construction foundation of the legendary city of the Swamp Tribe, the City of Swamp. Lear nodded and looked at hags on the side. Leave 5 teams and the Swamp Tree people to guard the supplies. Everyone else, follow me. Yes, Lord. Hags immediately went to mobilize people. 15 teams gathered. Lear didn't stay for long and turned to the southeast. With the Swamp Tree people guarding the territory, this greatly liberated the power in his hands. Without the burden of the caravan, the marching speed was very fast. Walking in the wet swamp, Lear felt a strong sense of intimacy and comfort. His perception was expanded to the greatest extent. He could also sense danger even in places beyond his sight. The range reached 300 meters. When powerful creatures like flying dragons appeared, this range would be increased several times. The swamp was his home ground. After marching about 2 kilometers, Lear suddenly waved his hand to stop the army. He looked at the reeds that were half a person's height and fluttering in the breeze 100 meters ahead. All troops, be on guard, there are enemies ambushing in the reeds. The amber eyes of the wetland lizardman immediately revealed murderous intent. Gathered at his side, sensing their actions, curses came from the reeds, rustling and shaking. A group of ugly creatures, 1.5 meters tall, emerged from the cave, looking at them fiercely. The head had an ugly fish face, and the dead white eyes were extremely creepy. The body was covered with slippery and sticky mucus, with a pungent stench, which made people feel sick. Standing on 2 feet, holding a bone spear in his hand. Half Malik. Level 5. Potential 1 star. Racial talent, slippery mucus. The mucus on the body has extra resistance to magic, and the magic damage received is reduced by 20%. Skills, mucus harpoon, 1 star. Mucus is attached to the weapon, which can cause adhesion and deceleration when attacking the enemy. Wetland life, 1 star. Move in the wetland and gain an additional 30% movement speed. Evaluation, common life in the swamp. In a moment, the number of half-murlocs exceeded 4 squadrons. Lear looked a little unkind. 1 star potential, level 5 wild monster. What cats and dogs dare to ambush? Kill. A cold snort. Hags took the lead and rushed forward. With an absolutely violent attitude, he tore the 7 or 8 half-fishmen in front of him and killed into the crowd. The blood dyed his body red, making this wetland lizardman hero more and more crazy. Brutal. When he is hurt or attacks, he will become extremely brutal. All attributes will increase by 30%, fearless of pain, and fight the enemy to death. Crazy blood. After tasting the taste of blood, the body size will increase by 20% and the strength will increase by 40%. All skills are born for killing. Ordinary wetland lizardmen are not so fierce in combat, but they are also killing half-fishmen. A wetland lizardman swung a steel knife to chop, and the half-fishman fighting with him was very flexible and ducked to avoid it. The spear in his hand pierced his abdomen fiercely. But click, the bone spear broke directly. Only a white mark was left on his armor. The wetland lizardman grinned and swung his arm violently. The sharp claws were like knives, piercing through the chest directly, and a bloody claw appeared on the back of the murloc. With a strong swing, the body was torn apart and thrown aside like garbage. The efficiency of slaughtering was not much slower than that of the level 3 Keld Ratman. The ordinary wetland lizardmen were stronger than these murlocs individually. With the crushing of equipment, they immediately showed their brutal side. Although the murlocs were equally fierce, the weapons in their hands could not even pierce the armor of the wetland lizardmen. Puff. One after another, the murlocs were slaughtered, and the number of the 4 squadrons decreased at an exaggerated rate. Soon, there were less than 3 teams left on the field. These swamp monsters finally collapsed. The fear in their eyes could no longer be concealed, and they threw down their weapons with trembling hands and turned to flee. But in order to prevent the other party from running away, Lear had already mobilized several teams to block the bushes in advance. The grinning wetland lizardmen began the final finishing work. The steel knives swung together. Puff, puff. The sound of the long knives entering the flesh and tearing the flesh and bones resounded through the sky. The haystacks were stained with blood. All the 5th and 5th level fishmen from the 4 squadrons were slaughtered. The price paid was more than 30 people were injured, and all of them were lightly injured. About 30 people, and all of them were lightly injured. Lear originally wanted to find a few survivors, but by the end, there was no one left who could breathe. Obviously, they killed too many people. He didn't hesitate, looking at the corpses all over the ground. His eyes were no longer strange, and his tone was a little happy. Gather all together. These corpses are rich spoils of war. The wetland lizardmen had experienced the Keld Ratman, and they immediately became excited. They moved the corpses over quickly and piled them into a pile, and then stood on one side with expectation. Lear smiled, and didn't waste words. The magic power on his body surged, and the light blue light enveloped the surroundings. Scarlet life energy floated up from the broken bodies of the murlocs and poured into the bodies of the surrounding wetland lizardmen. When these corpses turned into residue, the evolution degree on the panel increased directly from 50% to 70%. It was a big step forward from breaking the limit and evolving into a 2-star potential. This made Lear very happy. The level 5 murlocs provided more life energy than the level 3 ratman. Obviously, the higher the level, the richer the life essence. The future battles and hunting have also become a good thing. Chapter 31. Haggis led people to search, but did not find the habitat of the half-murlocs. Seeing this, Lear did not waste any time and continued on his way. Passing through this reed area, there is an algae area in front. The green algae pulls out long ties, and small pure white flowers grow on the top, floating on the water and swaying with the swamp current. The breeze blows, and the white flowers sway, exuding bursts of fragrance. Lear felt a little more relaxed when he saw this scenery. At this moment, the wetland lizard man in front let out a cry of surprise. He immediately came closer. In the muddy water, you can see several huge 3-toed footprints, several times thicker than a millstone, heading deep into the swamp. An unknown life passed by here. Judging from the appearance of the footprints, it is definitely a monster with a terrifying size. Lear's heart trembled, although no dangerous aura was sensed. But my inner vigilance increased again. There are countless dangers in the swamp, so we must not be careless. He glanced at the direction the other party was leaving, and silently noted it down for future exploration. It seems that because of the remaining power of the flying dragon, except for the half-murloc just now, there are not many swamp monsters around. The road was smooth, and after passing through a dense forest, Lear was shocked. Ahead is an area filled with low haystacks. Turbid water kept flowing between the haystacks. These haystacks, which are no bigger than the insteps, are deeply rooted in the swamp, fixing the pieces of soil and forming stepping stones floating on the swamp. It is also the most common thing in swamps. When he stepped onto the haystack, Lear felt that the surroundings suddenly became dry. The air in the swamp was originally as humid as returning to the southern sky, but now the moisture in the air seemed to have been sucked away by something. Look around. In the center of this swamp haystack, there is a large cluster of vines about 20 meters wide. The root of the vine is as thick as a thigh, and the top shoots are about the size of a thumb. What is striking is that the vines are dotted with stars, twinkling and shining under the sunlight. It's like the stars are flowing. Gives people a dreamy feeling. Starry sky vine. Lear's eyes lit up instantly. This appearance is exactly like its name, starry sky. Judging from the appearance alone, it is definitely not an ordinary thing. Stare and look. The opponent's attribute panel immediately came to mind. Starry sky vine. Level 2 stars. Characteristics 1. Tough. The texture is as tough as a steel rope, difficult to cut, and can grow quickly after breaking. 2. The starry sky can absorb starlight to grow, and can store starlight and turn it into magic power, which can speed up the physical recovery rate of surrounding life. Evaluation: a unique vine in the swamp, but it needs the care of the vine fairy to survive. Lear was pleasantly surprised. This is actually a 2-star magic plant. Both properties are excellent, not to mention the tough texture. There is also a property that can speed up physical recovery. This is used to build a house and is absolutely perfect. However, the evaluation made him a little surprised. What kind of creature is this vine fairy? While confused, he suddenly saw a strange creature the size of a fist flying through the vines out of the corner of his eye. The opponent has a pair of green wings woven with vines, and when it flaps, a little green light shines from behind. She has fair and soft skin, a round and chubby face, and is wearing a small vine skirt. With a crown of thorns on her head, she looks like a little princess. After falling on a vine, the strange creature saw a white flesh insect eating the vine, and frowned in distress. With a wave of his hand, the starry sky vines erupted into spots of light, and the flesh insect seemed to be bounced off by a spring, flying far away and hitting a haystack. The chubby little cute thing giggled and smiled contentedly. Then he flapped his little wings and continued to patrol his territory. Is this fist-sized, fleshy little guy the vine fairy? It's too cute. Lear was made cute. If this thing were on Earth, it would definitely be a top national treasure. Vine fairy. Level 5. Potential 3 stars. Racial talent. The gift of vines can absorb power from the vines and improve the level. Skills grow fast 2 stars. It exudes unique energy and can greatly speed up the growth of vines. Wonderful journey 2 stars. Can blend into vines, use vines to avoid enemies, and can move freely within vines. When entering the roots, it can control vines. Sparkle 2 stars. Make yourself glow, giving off the light your vines need to grow. Evaluation. Strange magical lives. They exist like flowers in spring and cicadas in summer. 3-star potential. Lear's eyes looked a little hot. He keenly felt that these little cuties might be more precious treasures than the starry sky vines. It is rare for the intelligence system to give such a special evaluation. He didn't expect to have such an unexpected gain. At this moment, the vine fairy who was traveling among the vines also noticed something strange and suddenly let out a cry of surprise. The body turned into a point of light and merged directly into the vine. Looking around, there is only a starry vine left. This is that skill. A wonderful journey. It's amazing. While Lear was thinking, the wetland lizard man who was exploring ahead had already approached the vines. The branches of the starry sky vines suddenly danced like an octopus. Whoosh, the vines, which were tougher than steel ropes, hit the air, making a sharp explosion. The wetland lizard man was immediately startled and retreated quickly. If he was whipped, even armor could not stop it. It was obviously not just luck that this bunch of vines could grow and multiply. Watching the vines waving secretly, Lear smiled a little. What he liked most was these immovable lives. The magic power was running, and the mental power was fully opened. A majestic pressure surged up. It instantly enveloped the vines. The remaining power of the gods. At this moment, he could clearly sense that there were 16 breaths of life hidden in the vines. The vine fairies who sensed the power of the gods did not hide unexpectedly, but showed their figures one by one with a little excitement. They poked their heads out from the vines, nervous and excited, and looked at him with a little disbelief. Father God, you are back. I thought you forgot about us. Are you really the Father God? Father God. The excited voice made Lear, who was ready to overpower others, a little surprised. Father God. This title, could it be that the vine fairies were created by the swamp god? With a move in his heart, he looked at these little guys lovingly. Children, the past is the past. I am back again. I will take back everything that belongs to us. Come home with me and start over. These words made all the vine fairies excited. Feeling the breath of the swamp god that penetrated into their souls, they looked at him with tears in their eyes and flew over with their wings flapping. Father God, you finally came to pick us up. Lear smoothly imprinted a mark in his soul, looking at these fist-sized 3-star lives with eyes full of attachment and trust. The emotions in his heart were also quite subtle. Is this okay? Is it too simple? I am not used to it. A chubby vine fairy flew to Lear and rubbed against his face affectionately, like a clingy kitten. The moment he touched these little guys, the godhead in Lear's mind emitted a hazy glow. He was very close to these little guys. This was a situation that had never happened before. Obviously, the other party's father god was not called for nothing. He could clearly sense the emotions of these little guys at the moment. Joy, excitement, joy, and joy. All joyful. At this moment, a message quietly flowed into his mind from the Godhead. The Vine Fairy was a strange life created by the Swamp God, using part of the power of the Creator God to help the Swamp God take care of the swamp. But with the fall of the Swamp God, the Vine Fairy gradually declined and died, and there were few left. And there are still many swamp lives that have a deep connection with the Swamp God, but some have become extinct, and some are hidden somewhere unknown. The Vine Fairy is just one of them. Lear understood it now. It turns out there is such a connection. No wonder the other party let down his guard so quickly. The breath of the Godhead cannot be forged. This is the power that belongs only to the gods. It is also a mark engraved in the soul and blood of the Vine Fairy. After coming to his senses, Lear showed a kind smile and stretched out his hand to pinch the chubby face of the little guy in front of him. "Take the starry sky vine with us and go home." "Yes, Father God." The cheering Vine Fairy immediately flew back to the habitat, and the body turned into a light spot and merged into the vine. The next moment, swish! A large area of 20-meter-wide vines suddenly rose from the ground. The roots pulled out of the ground, and the vines turned into tentacles, supporting the trunk. It looked like an octopus. Lear only realized at this moment that this large area of starry sky vines was actually a tree. Although it has dense secondary roots, there is only one main root. 16 little guys with 3-star potential directly controlled this 2-star vine to move. The scene of hundreds and thousands of vines dancing wildly looked quite visually impactful. Lear was very satisfied and waved his hand, asking the other party to follow him back to the still blank Wailu city. Under the control of the Vine Fairy, the starry sky vine turned into a special monster. It moved very aggressively, and it could cross wherever it passed, whether it was a pool of water or mud. The sun gradually set in the west and began to sink into the earth. When walking back about 5 kilometers, when passing a muddy pool with a diameter of 400 to 500 meters, Lear suddenly fixed his eyes and looked at the other side. At this moment, on the other side of the muddy pool, a group of special lives with a shoulder height of 2 meters appeared in front of him. The other party had a curved giant horn on his head, which was covered with moss. The markings on his body were like plum blossoms, which were very eye-catching. A pair of dark eyes looked at them curiously, with alertness and inquiry in their eyes. Especially the starry sky vines controlled by the Vine Fairy, their exaggerated size made them very alert. One of them was half the size of the other deer, with an exaggerated shoulder height of 3 meters. Even from hundreds of meters away, one could feel the other's majesty. Lear looked at it intently. The other's attribute panel appeared in his mind. Swamp Giant Horned Deer. Hero Unit. Level 12. Potential 4 stars. Racial talent Mud Walker. Possessed by the power of the swamp, can jump and run freely in the mud, and the movement speed is increased by an additional 60%. Hero talent Illusory Body. Can make your body become illusory, immune to physical damage, and reduce 70% magic damage. Health 12,000 points, all attributes increased by 30%. Skills Charge 3 stars, lower the head, with the giant horn in front, and when charging the enemy, the speed increases by 60% and the impact force increases by 80%. Earth Trampling 3 stars, tramples the earth, causing all life within a radius of 15 meters with itself as the center to stun. Magic Horn 3 stars, the giant horn on the head can cast 3 magics mud spell. Hitting the enemy can directly melt it into mud. Magic Shield. Create a magic shield to protect yourself or give it to your companions. Light Spear Penetration. Create a light spear that penetrates all enemies within 50 meters. Evaluation. A giant deer living in the swamp. It is the king of giant deer. Lear took a deep breath, and his eyes were a little fearful and hot. Level 12. 4-star potential hero. Swamp Giant Deer. This set of skills is fierce. Now the 200 wetland lizardmen and 12 swamp treemen in his hands can't do anything to this swamp giant deer hero. The fierce skill of the divine power, once cast on him, will definitely cause the opponent's rage. I can't afford to offend him, so I'll go home quickly. He silently retracted his gaze and asked the wetland lizardmen to speed up their actions. The Vine Fairy also controlled the starry sky vines to increase their speed. Soon, this group of impressive lives disappeared from sight. Lear silently memorized this area on the magic map and will come back when he becomes stronger in the future. The unknown giant three-toed footprints and the swamp giant deer swamp need to be explored in depth. The next return trip did not encounter any more accidents. When we arrived at the city of Wispy Doo, the sun just sank into the swamp, and only a piece of afterglow remained in the sky. The territory was in full swing at this moment. Some swamp people were piling up the materials they had carried down, neatly stacked. Another group was clearing the ground and setting up tents. The carriage was parked aside, and the strong unicorn pulling the carriage was slowly eating the grass on the ground. The 12 level 9 swamp trees have returned to their indifferent appearance, with their branches and leaves swaying in the breeze. It looks quite harmonious. Seeing Lear return, Bane, a bog hero who was too busy to touch the ground, immediately stepped forward to greet him. Grown-ups. Although he saluted him, his eyes were fixed on the squirming starry sky vines. The gorgeous appearance like the starry sky allowed him to identify the vines without any difficulty. Sir, did you really bring back the starry sky vine? The god of the swamp is above, you must have received a gift from God. This is the legendary magical plant used to build the most powerful city of the swamp tribe, the city of Quagmire. Although that city had already collapsed in the War of Gods, wouldn't it be more glorious if the broken sword was recast? But why is this vine alive? I haven't heard that starry sky vines are the same as tree people. Lear saw the confusion in Bane's eyes and said slowly, there are vine fairies hidden in the starry sky vines. In the future, they will be responsible for cultivating the starry sky vines. Building houses with them also requires you to communicate with them. As he spoke, he motioned to the spacious grassland in front of him. You find a suitable place to place it, and it will be used as a growth area for starry sky vines in the future. Vine fairy. Bane's eyes lit up. Those legendary beings really exist. I glanced at the octopus-like vines with curiosity for a few times. After I didn't find the specific figure, I looked away with a little pity. Sir, why don't you place it in the north of the territory for the time being? And there is a vine fairy here. If you need to move it, it won't be too troublesome. Lear nodded. You just have to arrange these. After that, he gave another warning. Complete the territory planning as soon as possible. Yes, sir. Looking at the excited Bane, Lear waved towards the starry sky vines. Go with Bane, this will be our home from now on, and the city of Wailu will be built in our hands. Bane patted his chest and assured, the glory of the swamp will surely be restored. But after saying that, I felt a little regretful. It's a pity that the number of starry sky vines is too small to support the construction of the territory, and can only be used to build core buildings. The amount of vines required to build a territory is absolutely staggering, and now it can only build 3 or 2 houses. Hearing this, the little guys in the vines suddenly became anxious. Waves of spiritual power came. Father God, we can make the starry sky vines grow faster. We have a solution, Father God. Leave it to us, we won't let you down. They are vine fairies. How can you let Father God be embarrassed by such a thing? Lear sensed the mood of the vine fairies and looked at their skills again, becoming interested. Communicated with these little guys in detail. Finally, the vine fairy told him that the starry sky vines grew to such a large scale not because they grew slowly, but because they were too lazy to cultivate them. If necessary, the growth rate can be greatly increased, and the starry sky vine can grow 1 meter in 1 day. If what the vine fairy said is true, it is enough to use starry sky vines to build buildings. I felt more at ease. Immediately asked Bane to communicate with the vine fairy in detail. He knew nothing about architecture, and Bane, the craftsman hero, was responsible for the actual construction. The squirming figure of the starry sky vine attracted everyone's attention. When they came to the north of the territory, the roots seemed to slowly penetrate into the ground. The vines quietly settled on the water's edge. Its natural appearance looks like it was originally part of this area. After the starry sky vines fell, light spots flowed, and a fist-sized vine fairy appeared between the vines. A pair of wings made of green vines flap, delicate and small, wearing a crown of thorns on its head, and its clothes are also made of vines and leaves. Paired with the fleshy face, it's indescribably cute. Curious and timid, he hid in the vines, stuck his little head out, and timidly looked outside. After meeting a stranger, he would hide away shyly. The moment he saw these little guys, Bane was instantly adorable, and a kind smile appeared on his wrinkled face. I looked at it frequently with excitement and curiosity. Is this the Vine Fairy? The legendary Great Swamp God, a magical life created by borrowing the power of the Creator God. God is favoring your Lord. The super cute Vine Fairy immediately won everyone's love. No one would not be interested in this chubby little cutie. The mud people who finished their work gathered around and looked at it curiously. A smile like an ant appeared in their eyes. Sensing the kindness of the crowd, and with Lear next to them, these timid guys were no longer afraid. They poked their heads out of the vines with a little shyness and looked at the crowd curiously. Then they gradually became bolder and began to fly to the edge of the vines tentatively to contact the mud people. Finally, they made sure that these people would not hurt themselves, flapped their wings and began to shuttle among the crowd, like a playful child. However, they always kept a distance from the crowd and would not be as close as they were with Lear. Some people wanted to pinch them curiously, but they were all stared back by the fierce eyes of these little guys. It made people laugh. Bane had not recovered from his excitement at this moment. Only he knew what the Vine Fairy meant. This is the life created by the Swamp God. Unlimited potential. He dispersed the crowd of onlookers with a fierce face and went up to communicate with these little cuties alone. Seeing this, Lear no longer paid attention to them and sat on the grass beside him with a little fatigue. After traveling for more than half a month, he felt very tired even though he had upgraded to the transformation level. At this moment, he arrived at the destination and obtained the star vines and vine fairies, which made him feel a lot more relaxed. The feeling of fatigue surged up. After calming down, he couldn't help but fall into thought. The Noya rice currently in hand can be used for the current population for 5 months. But the food problem still needs to be prepared for a rainy day. There are 30 carriages of basic supplies, which are enough for early use. The biggest difficulty in the territory at present is actually building houses. The swamp is like a flat mountain. This lawn looks flat, but if you build a building, a heavy rain may cause the ground to sink and collapse unless it is fixed with magic. But after getting the Starry Sky Vine, this problem was solved. The most important thing now is to carry out the initial construction of the territory and carry out various basic work at the same time. Let the city of Wailu gradually operate. There are so many things to do, and it takes a little bit to do it. Take a deep breath and look at the intelligence again. The other few have been completed. At present, only the group of more than 500 fierce rotten centaurs with a level of 9, 30 kilometers north of Up Pointing Arrow, cannot be dealt with. This high-level wild monster gathering point needs to be tried after the strength in hand is sufficient. While thinking, Lear suddenly seemed to think of something, waved his hand, and asked Haggis to get his bag. After a while, Lear took out a small cage woven with exquisite bamboo strips from the bag. A gray, fleshy little bug was eating leaves inside. This is the swamp life, mudworm, that Philena, the flower of the north, got from the ancient ruins. According to the other party, mudworms are ancient life forms that can grow to 100 meters long and can prey on giant dragons when they grow up. But because they have been sleeping for too long, their source power is lacking and they can never recover. And on the attribute panel, the attributes of mudworms are also very simple. Mudworm, level 1, potential, source damaged. And then it's gone. The attributes are so simple that it's confusing. He has studied it several times these days, but he hasn't found anything, and the Godhead has no reaction to mudworms. This worm seems to be just an ordinary vegetable worm that only knows how to eat leaves. The Vine Fairy who was communicating with Bane seemed to have discovered something at this time, flapping her wings and whirring around Lear. The big black eyes looked at the little worm in the cage with a bit of heartache. Father God, this little guy is so pitiful. I heard it calling for help. It's dying. A Vine Fairy flew to Lear's hand, hugged his arm and said pitifully, Father God, please save it. The mudworm is asking for help. Lear said in a deep voice. Can you hear it talking? Ask it what it needs. The Vine Fairy who was holding his arm immediately lowered her head, hummed a few words in front of the cage, and then said excitedly, Father God, it needs to eat mud. Lear was stunned. Eat mud. So the mudworm really eats mud. Are you sure? Of course. The Vine Fairy was very proud. The more magical energy the mud contains, the faster it will improve. But now, it only needs to eat mud. Those leaves are useless. They can only keep it from starving to death. Lear was speechless. No wonder Philena, the genius magician, didn't know how to let the other party recover. With the other party's identity, and the treasure obtained from the ancient ruins, she would definitely not feed it mud. It was precious to begin with, and was fed with magic plants every day. Who would have thought of this? He did not hesitate, picked up the small cage and came to the edge of the grass, and carefully opened the cage. He took out the mudworm. It was fleshy and felt like cotton when pinched. He tentatively put it on the mud. This little finger-sized, gray, soft guy immediately let out a cry of joy. He immediately lay on the mud and began to eat frantically, as if he had not eaten for half a month, eating with a crunch. The rustling sound was like a silkworm chewing on mulberry leaves. It cleaned up a large piece of mud in front of it, and the life breath like a candle gradually stabilized. Every now and then, it would raise its head and burp. Its belly became round and bulging, and it was obviously thicker than its body. This gray little bug was actually a little cute at this moment. While Lear was thinking, he injected his mental power into the godhead. The next moment, the pressure of the godhead surged out and directly enveloped the mud bug. Before, the opponent's life breath was too weak, so it was difficult for him to subdue the opponent. If something unexpected happened, the loss would be great. Now it can be done. The gray mud bug, with its belly turned upside down, suddenly became energetic, turned its head to look at Lear, and moved its body. A sense of joy came from his mind, without the slightest intention of resistance. Lear's heart moved slightly. A soothing emotion came out. In its soul, the soul mark was imprinted. From then on, no matter how ferocious the mud bug became, it would be under his control and loyal to him forever. However, it is incredible that such a small pudding can grow to 100 meters long and prey on giant dragons. Bring the mudworm to the area in front of the starry sky vines, let this little guy eat mud here, and don't leave this area. At the same time, send 2 wetland lizardmen to guard to prevent accidents. It was already dusk when all this was done. It was night. On the spacious grassland, Lear looked up at the night sky with a little light. The ears were full of frogs and insects, which made people relax inexplicably. It was pitch black all around, and no torches or candles were lit. Having light in a dark environment is not necessarily a good thing. There are swamp creatures with night vision around, so there is no need to worry about inconvenience. Everyone gathered around the swamp tree man and lay on the ground to sleep peacefully. These tall tree men are the best sentinels. The tents are used to store supplies. Before the house is built, it basically has to be like this. After entering the deep night, a breeze suddenly blew, the clouds in the sky dissipated, the starry sky began to flicker, and the night was full of stars. Twinkling, like a dream, Lear, who was not asleep, suddenly found that spots of light were lit up in the north. He sat up and looked with a little curiosity. In the starry sky vine area, particles of light condensed in the air and slowly merged into the vines. At the same time, fist-sized light bulbs were shuttling through the vines. Wherever they passed, the speed at which the starry sky vines swallowed the starlight increased significantly. The buds on it were growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The vine fairy was cultivating the starry sky vines. Early the next morning, the swamp people woke up and started a new day of work. Many people were surprised to find that the vines that took root at the edge of the territory last night and spread out about 20 meters had increased their coverage to 22 to 3 meters today. It was obviously expanded. When Lear arrived, Bane said excitedly, "My lord, the speed at which the vine fairy cultivates the starry sky vines far exceeded my expectations. Today, we can build a house. Build it today." Lear raised his eyebrows slightly. "How is the planning?" Bane said with a little pride. "My lord, I have completed the preliminary planning with the help of starlight last night." He took out a piece of paper with patterns drawn on it from his arms. Lear took it, looked at the dense patterns and strange marks on it, and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Tell me about it," Bane responded, pointed to a corner of the map, and began to describe it in detail. Up pointing arrow north, I plan to make it a living area. The water in the swamp flows down from here, and the water will not be polluted in the future. Right pointing arrow east, as a military zone, the army is stationed here. In the future, it must be separated from the outside world and outsiders are prohibited from entering, so as not to expose our military secrets. Down pointing arrow south, as the industrial zone of Welu City, blacksmith shops, weapon shops, alchemy workshops, tailor shops, etc. can be set up here. Left pointing arrow west, connected to the outside world, the path into the swamp extends from here, which can be temporarily designated as a commercial area. In the future, when Welu City grows stronger, it will inevitably communicate with the outside world. Having a commercial area can limit the outside world's prying into the territory, and it can also be centrally managed. The central area is your mansion, which is also the government affairs center, responsible for handling various affairs of the territory. Said with some trepidation. These are all preliminary ideas. There are still many imperfections. Do you have any points to add? Lear looked at the plan above and fell into thought. It was indeed very rough, but at least the various functional sections of the territory were distinguished. It was far from perfect, but for a blank territory, it was no problem to lay the foundation. While thinking, he suddenly thought of something and asked, "Can I use star vines to build houses on the mud and pools?" Bain was stunned for a moment, then nodded. "Of course you can. Star vines are the cornerstone of the construction of the Swamp City. The Swamp City has always been the most powerful city among the Swamp Clan in ancient times, leaving behind countless legends. Compared with the main city of the Swamp Clan, the city of Weil, which only remained in the mouth, the Swamp City was regarded as a holy city by more Swamp Clan. Although this city has long disappeared in the long river of time. But such a city uses star vines to build houses, how bad can this magical plant be?" Lear nodded. "In that case, then expand the territory planning scope. This grassland with a diameter of 2 kilometers can't accommodate the city of Welu. The later planning should be done as soon as possible, and we should be bold and have a long-term vision." The calm tone shocked Bain's mind, and his eyes were a little hot. "Yes, sir." After arousing Bain's fighting spirit, Lear looked at the place where the Swamp Tree Man took root. "First build the government hall of Welu City, and the rest can be postponed. He needs a landmark, a building that gathers people's hearts. Magnificent, grand, and leave enough space for expansion. It will not be outdated in the next 20 years, or even 50 or 100 years. This is my requirement for the government center." "As you wish." Bain was ambitious at this moment, and he wanted to use what he had learned in his life immediately. When the two communicated, they sensed Lear's breath, and the vine fairies who were sleeping in the starry sky vines jumped out one by one. Flying to his side with flapping wings, they began to act like a spoiled child, rubbing their chubby, white and rosy little faces against him. Bain's eyes were full of envy. Yesterday, he wanted to touch the faces of these little guys, but he was scolded angrily. While the cute and fierce appearance made people laugh and cry, it also made him realize that only Lear could make these little guys so intimate. Envy is too much. Today, cooperate with Bain to build our first building. Keep doing your best. Encouraged by Lear, the vine fairies immediately became energetic. One by one, they rushed to pat their chests and promise him. "Father God, I can make the starry sky vines grow very quickly, you will be satisfied. Father God, I can make them grow very strong, stronger than everyone else. Father God, yes, I am the same." Looking at these little cute things, Lear laughed. After a series of praises, all the vine fairies happily went to build with Bain. This swamp man is a true craftsman hero. Bain immediately recruited 20 people from the swamp people, took out a blueprint, and began to instruct them in detail. Then he looked at the vine fairies seriously and asked them to cultivate the starry sky vines at each point. When they entered the working state, their faces were full of seriousness and their momentum had obviously changed. They were completely free of the cautiousness that the swamp people usually carried. Although it was called cultivation, it was also very magical. The vine fairy broke off a piece of vine from the starry sky vine and planted it in the soil. Then a faint starlight emanated from his body, shining on the vines. The next moment, the vines seemed to be fast-forwarded dozens of times, taking root and sprouting at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, they grew into a small clump of vines. 16 vine fairies interlaced back and forth, and in less than half an hour, Bain had set a point and planted vines. Lear was also interested when he saw this scene. Bain did not want to use the ready-made vines to weave a house, but directly use the power of the vine fairy to let the vine grow a building. In this way, because of the existence of the Vine Fairy, this building can be continuously adjusted and expanded. If it is not suitable, it can be reorganized. In this way, the strengths of the starry sky vines and vine fairies are brought to the extreme. Not bad, very good. The only disadvantage of doing this may be that it consumes more vine fairies. These little guys have been busy all morning and are tired and sweaty. It consumes a lot to promote the cultivation of starry sky vines. Fortunately, the vine fairies do not need to consume food, and their energy source is the starry sky vines themselves. At noon, when the sun was scorching, the vine fairies went into the vines and had a good sleep. When they woke up in the afternoon, they had recovered and continued to use their skills of growing fast. Under their cultivation, the starry sky vines are growing at an exaggerated speed. At this rate, perhaps by the end of this month, a magnificent building will be able to rise from the ground. And this building is still alive. Even if the enemy invades, the vine fairy can control it to resist the enemy. Who can I ask for reason to be perfect? The vine fairy planted starry sky vines at 60 points in total, covering a diameter of 200 meters. Thanks to the efforts of these little guys, by sunset, the vines that had just been planted had grown to a height of one person. Each tree had 20 to 30 tender branches, full of vitality. At night, the stars scattered and illuminated the skirt of the goddess of night. The starry sky vines were even more colorful and dreamy. Under the starry night, the vine fairy, who had been busy all day, became more active. The body emitted a unique light, like a small light bulb, shuttling back and forth in the vines. Wherever it passed, the speed of the surrounding starlight condensation increased significantly. The starry sky vines that were just planted today began to grow at a faster rate. Bane was very excited watching from the side. Building a house can be so convenient, and the wonderful ideas in his mind can definitely be realized. Praise the goddess. By dawn, when the stars gradually dimmed, the starry sky vines had grown to more than 2 meters high. The number of vines increased to 40 or 50, and the new branches grew from the size of the little finger to the thickness of the thumb. This was just one day and one night. On the morning of August 7th, when Lear woke up, he saw a large area of vines growing in front of him. The outline of the first building of the city of Weirdo could be vaguely seen. The diameter of the land exceeded 200 meters, and if it continued to grow upward, it would definitely be a magnificent building that would amaze people. This is purely grown by vines, which is different from the modern cold cement buildings. It's comfortable. After a day of rest yesterday, Lear didn't stay in the territory to watch the vine fairy build a house today. Summon the wetland lizardmen warriors. Looking at the two squadrons in front of him, the fierce warriors in full armor, he nodded with satisfaction. Hags, leave 5 teams to guard the territory, and the others will continue to explore the swamp with me. The remaining power of the flying dragon has dissipated. Since yesterday afternoon, unknown roars have been constantly penetrating the swamp. It can be clearly felt that this wetland is becoming lively. The danger is accumulating. He must explore the surrounding environment as soon as possible. The wetland lizardman hero raised his head and responded. As you wish, Lord. Lear said no more, and let Bane and 5 teams of wetland lizardmen plus 12 level 9 swamp treemen guard the house. The existence of swamp treemen is the key to the fact that this grassland is not occupied by other swamp creatures. The inability to move is a fatal flaw, but in return, the ability to stand and fight is off the charts, which is not something that ordinary swamp creatures dare to challenge. Safety is guaranteed. The smelly giant monster and the 2-headed ogre have appeared in this area. Today's target is these 2 monsters. At the same time, the potential of the wetland lizardman must be improved as much as possible. He needs more powerful power. In the wilderness, the level of 6 is still too ordinary. Stepping into the muddy water, stepping on the haystack, searching towards the north of the city of Dew. 3 teams of wetland lizardmen acted as outpost scouts, 2 by 2, exploring the way ahead to prevent danger. Lear led 12 teams to support the rear. With the swamp godhood, the swamp is his home. The wet environment not only did not restrict his steps, but made him feel quite comfortable, and even the speed of the magic power in his body increased by more than 10 times compared to the outside, which was exaggerated. Less than 10 minutes after leaving the territory, a warning suddenly came from the front. A low roar, mixed in the swamp, was not noticeable, but this inconspicuous but penetrating roar was the way the lizardmen transmitted information. Even in the swamp, the transmission distance can reach 2 kilometers. The pheromone of the bee, the antennae of the ant, each life has its own way of transmitting information and surviving. Wetland lizardmen are more suitable for the swamp. Hag's eyes instantly became excited. Master, we found an enemy that can be hunted ahead. If they encounter an invincible danger, the roar of the wetland lizardmen will be a different sound. Lear nodded and asked the army to speed up. Not long after, they entered a bush more than 2 meters high, with blades like saws, very sharp. The armored wetland lizardmen protected Lear and sneaked in quietly. The 2 lizardmen who found the enemy were waiting here. Immediately report after seeing Lear. Master, there is a group of corrupted orcs entrenched outside the bush. The level is about level 6. And these corrupted orcs seem to have been attacked, and many of them are injured. Corrupted orcs. Lear's eyes moved slightly, and he signaled the other party to lead the way. After walking about 100 meters in the towering bushes, the wetland lizardman who led the way pointed to the front, and then gently pushed aside the bushes in front of him. Lear looked along the gap, and his eyes suddenly opened up. In this bush, there was a dry and hard open space covered with weeds. There were 50 or 60 figures inside. Green faces, fangs, emerald eyes, no hair on their heads, and large patches of moss on their skin. They wore gray animal skin short skirts, which smelled of mud and decaying plants. They were tall, almost all of them were over 1.8 meters tall, with bulging muscles, like bodybuilders, full of strength. But most of them had red and swollen wounds on their bodies. It looked like they were bitten by some ferocious insects. Some of the red swellings were even bigger than fists, and 7 or 8 lifeless corpses were placed in the edge area. They were also covered with fist-sized swellings. Quite permeable, the injured corrupted orcs were letting out low and painful wails, making the scene even more terrifying. Corrupted orcs. Level 6. Potential 1 star. Racial talent madness. After being severely injured, it enters a mad state. All attributes are increased by 40%, and sanity is reduced by 70%. Skills roar 1 star. After roaring, strength increases by 20% for 5 minutes. Explosive rage 1 star. Explodes with all power, and the next attack power increases by 30%. Evaluation. The orcs living in the swamp are ferocious in nature. Level 6 wild monster. Lear looked at the 2 lizard men and spoke in a low voice. The orcs here are all they have. Yes, Lord, these are the only corrupt orcs around here. Lear nodded and looked at the wetland lizard hero with sharp eyes. Haggis, you will lead the team to destroy them. Haggis's amber pupils instantly became ferocious. Your will is supreme. The gaze of the master is the direction they are heading. With a wave of his hand, the surrounding troops quietly and quickly gathered at the edge of the grass. A moment of great preparation. Kill. With a loud roar, the wetland lizardman warrior wolf pounced on the corrupted orcs whose morale was low and had been severely wounded by unknown creatures. The corrupt orcs didn't expect anyone to attack him by surprise, and they were severely injured, so they didn't even have to be on guard. When he reacted, the wetland lizardman warrior had his steel knife stained with blood. In the center, a particularly strong orc is astonished. Roaring wildly. Enemy attack. Counterattack. Counterattack. The rotten orcs stood up in panic and hurriedly launched a counterattack against the wetland lizardmen. The weapons in his hands are sharpened sticks and homemade maces. The fully armed wetland lizardmen not only have an absolute advantage in terms of equipment, but also have strong morale, top condition, and several times more numbers. The moment the 2 sides collided, the defeated corrupted orcs were torn apart instantly. More than 10 people were beheaded. A corrupted orc with a knife in his chest roared, his eyes suddenly turned red, and his aura surged. His eyes were distracted, his sanity was gone, and his eyes were full of madness. Go crazy. But the next second, the wetland lizard man noticed the enemy's movement and his eyes were cold. Hoo-hoo. 7 or 8 steel knives were violently swung around, drawing exaggerated blood marks on the flesh. Before the mad orc could break out, they were jointly killed. The wetland lizard warriors armed with steel knives are pure killing machines. There is no room for the enemy to fight back. Surprise attack, numerical superiority, high momentum, and good condition. With the superposition of various advantages, the corrupted orcs in front of them, who were already in a sluggish state, fought for only 3 minutes, and only 2 teams were left struggling to support themselves. The numerical advantage is further expanded. Even if he goes crazy, he can't stop the steel knife. Haggis looked at the most ferocious corrupt orc leader on the front line. With a ferocious laugh, scarlet arrogance erupted from his body, and he rushed forward. The corrupt orc leader sensed the danger, his eyes instantly turned scarlet, and he wanted to fight back. But the power of a hero is unparalleled. Cruelty 2 stars. When receiving damage or launching an attack, you will become extremely brutal, all attributes will be increased by 30%, you will not be afraid of pain, and you will fight the enemy without mercy. Crazy blood 2 stars. After tasting blood, the size increases by 20% and the strength increases by 40%. The attributes of the 2 skills plus the attributes of health improvement are added together, and the steel knife cuts through. The opponent was going crazy and his sanity was so low that he even wanted to hold the steel knife with his palm. Phew, the palm was chopped off and blood spurted out. Haggis gained the upper hand and showed no mercy. He turned the blade and poof, a huge head flew into the sky. Plop, the headless body and head fell to the ground at the same time. Corrupt orc leader, die. The strongest resistance force was killed, and the remaining corrupted orcs were immediately defeated. Under the attack of the steel swords, no one was left standing. This sudden battle took less than 5 minutes from start to finish. Looking at the corpses of orcs everywhere, Lear looked indifferently. To establish a territory in the wilderness, only steel swords and blood can be used. After the battle, the wetland lizardmen began to gather the corpses skillfully. Not long after, Haggis led someone to bring 2 dying orcs to him. The fist-sized red and swollen bump on his face was more eye-catching than the wounds on his body. My lord, we found 2 survivors. Seeing this, Lear immediately became curious. How did these orcs become like this? Orcs are indeed orcs, they are really tough and thick-skinned. One of them had his neck cut in half, but he was still breathing heavily. But what caught his eye the most was the big bump on his face that was as red and swollen as a peach. Lear asked curiously, "What's the matter with the big bump on your body?" The 2 corrupt orcs who looked at him angrily were going to say nothing, but when they heard this, their eyes suddenly turned red. "It's all those swamp wasps," the orc whose neck was cut in half said in a hoarse voice. "The swamp wasps gave birth to the queen bee. Human, do you know the role of the swamp queen bee? After eating the queen bee, you can improve your potential and activate your hero talent. We were killed by those bugs because we were hunting the queen bee," he said with a somewhat happy tone, and pointed behind him. "Do you want to activate your talent? Go find the swamp wasps. It's half an hour away in that direction," he said, and a leaky laugh came out of his throat. Then his body stiffened and he stared with his eyes wide open. The remaining corrupted orc seemed to understand his companion's thoughts when he heard this, and sneered at Lear. "That's right, the queen of the swamp wasps is the treasure that everyone wants to get. Go find the swamp wasps." There were 300 of them, and only a few dozen were left. If they hadn't found a special way to disperse the swarm before, they would have been destroyed long ago. They didn't believe that greedy humans could resist this temptation. As long as they dared to go, they would be retaliated more crazily by the swamp wasps that had been angered once. The obvious intention was clear at a glance. Lear frowned slightly and turned to look at Hags. "What is the queen of the swamp?" Hags suddenly came back to his senses and said with a bit of excitement, "Sir, the swamp wasps are extremely ferocious insects in the swamp. They usually hunt and survive alone and do not build nests. Only when the queen bee is born will they gather together. The queen of the swamp wasps is the leader of the swamp wasps and has extremely special powers. The most extraordinary thing is that they can enhance the potential of life and activate the heroic talents of people. Even if the talents have been awakened, they can awaken the second one." At this point, his face was full of excitement. This is not a legend, but it has been verified by many people. After saying that, he added another sentence. "After the queen of the swamp wasps is born, it will become extremely dangerous. Not only will the number increase rapidly, but it will also become more ferocious and powerful. I have heard that there are swamps completely occupied by swamp wasps, and outsiders cannot set foot at all. These rotten orcs are luring us." Lear nodded slowly. Looking at the rotten orc who showed a smile of revenge, he smiled. To kill with a borrowed knife, these guys still know how to use their brains. The interrogation continued, but the orc said nothing except the information about the swamp wasp. Seeing the other party's breath gradually disappear, Lear didn't waste any words and waved his hand to let Hags deal with it directly. Swamp wasp. The appearance of the rotten orc and Hags aroused his curiosity. Awakening the second talent, he looked at his blank hero talent and fell into silence. Speaking of which, he is still a level 3 mage apprentice with a potential of only 2 stars. Although there is an evolution degree later, it has always been 1%, and there is no other movement. The remaining power of the gods and the gift of the swamp are obtained after the fusion of the godhead. It is not his own talent. He is not a hero unit yet. A little embarrassed. The potential of this body is obviously limited. If it were not for the swamp godhead, it might not be possible to condense the seeds of magic power in this life and embark on the extraordinary path. Compared with a true genius like Philena, the gap is far. If all the godheads and powers are collected in the later stage, it can be made up. Now, being able to awaken a talent of your own and become a hero unit is valuable. Even if you can't use it yourself, it's enough to train another hero or strengthen Haggis. While thinking, the corpses have been gathered. Lear's eyes are deep. The godhead exudes a faint pressure, and the blue energy covers the corpse. A stream of life energy is extracted and dissipated to the surrounding wetland lizardmen. These 50 orcs turned into dregs, and the degree of evolution increased from 70% to 75%. Increased by 5%. The higher the level, the higher the life energy obtained. These orcs are obviously more than 1 level stronger than the half-fish and the Kelder ratman. There is another 25%, and the wetland lizardmen can complete the promotion. At this time, Haggis approached with a blood-stained package with an excited expression and handed it over. Master, there are gold coins in it. Lear took it with great surprise. Orcs still have this thing in stock. Open it and see a large golden area. He fished it out with his hands, and felt the unique texture of metal. There are at least thousands of gold coins in this package. Where did these guys get it from? Are there any other discoveries? Hags shook his head. Nothing. Lear felt better with the heavy gold coins in his hands. These corrupt orcs not only became spoils of war, but also contributed thousands of gold coins. Not bad, very good. If the monsters in the swamp were so sensible, the construction of the City of Wisdom would be easy. After cleaning up the battlefield, continue to explore outside. Look in the direction mentioned by the corrupted orcs. Let the wetland lizardmen who are exploring the way ahead search in this direction first. It's a pity that the intelligence system will not be refreshed until the 10th. If there is information about the quagmire wasp, it can save a lot of effort. Continue to go deeper. There are still traces of the orcs retreating in this direction. Soon, a gathering place of wild monsters slaughtered by corrupted orcs was found. This is a group of half-murlocs encountered before, about 50 in number. Lear happily accepted the corpses all over the ground, which increased the evolution level by 1% again. It's a little less, but a little adds up to a lot, and it will always reach the full state. Passing through the murloc area, I saw an open space with more than 40 orc corpses piled up in a swamp. There were huge bags all over their bodies, which was quite creepy. Lear showed a bright smile on his face. Good fellow, this is not to patrol the swamp, this is to pick up treasures. Collect corpses and extract life energy. After a set of combos, the evolution degree is increased again. 80%. One step away from evolution. Who doesn't love the gains that come for free? Comfortable. Continue to explore along the path. 10 minutes later, the wetland lizardman in front sent a warning. Lear immediately asked everyone to restrain their breath, slow down their pace, and move forward carefully. A moment later, passing through a haystack swamp area, at the end of the site, a giant tree that was 70 or 80 meters high and covered the sky appeared. Around this tree, the sound of countless wings flapping was breathtaking. One by one, giant wasps with a body length of more than 30 centimeters, thin waist, poisonous stinger, and black and yellow were flying around the tree. The dense number was like waves of dark tides, and it was impossible to count them clearly. The center of the tree was covered with honeycombs built of black mud. It was like a wasp city. Just one look at it can send chills down one's spine. Swamp wasp. Level 5. Potential 1 star. Racial talent poison needle. The poison needle on the back is highly toxic, which will cause huge poison damage to the enemy and paralyze the enemy. Skill fast flight 1 star. The flight speed is increased by 40%. Piercing 1 star. The tail needle has a strong piercing force and has armor breaking damage to armor. Evaluation. The wasps with highly toxic venom will become extremely terrifying if they are led by the queen bee. The level is all level 5, and there are tens of thousands of them flying outside. Together with the ones hidden inside the nest, hundreds of thousands are conservative estimates. This terrifying scene made Lear have a question in his mind. Why do those corrupt orcs dare to spy on this scale of swamp wasps? A single swamp wasp is nothing, but hundreds of thousands of fist-sized swarms are another concept. Once an attack is launched, it will be a death storm covering the sky and the sun. Moreover, the swamp wasps also have a queen bee that can control the swarm. Lear racked his brains but couldn't figure out who gave those corrupt orcs the courage to dare to attack the swamp wasps. After observing silently for a while, he did not continue to approach and waved his hand to let everyone evacuate. After leaving this area, Lear opened the magic map and marked it on it. This is a high-level monster stronghold, and it is still not available now. Go back and accumulate strength before coming back. At the moment, he turned around and headed towards the place where the stinking giant mentioned by the swamp tree man. However, the information given by the swamp tree man was too little. After searching for several hours, there was still no trace of the stinking giant. Instead, he encountered a group of half-fishmen. The number of 2 squadrons increased the potential improvement progress of the wetland lizardmen to 83%. A small harvest. At dusk, Lear watched the sun gradually sink into the swamp, and did not stay for long, and began to return. Under the reflection of the colorful clouds in the sky, he returned to the territory. I immediately found that the vines that were only 2 meters high in the morning had grown to 3 meters, and gradually showed a tendency to surround. The progress was rapid. The round vine fairy was still trying to emit light and guide the growth of the starry sky vines. These little guys are really treasures. Lear was full of smiles. After dinner, he called Bane. This swamp hero was still excited. The performance of the vine fairy gave him hope of fulfilling his dream. In the past 2 days, all the swamp people were organized to discuss and prove the planning and construction of the city of Wei-Lu in detail. The swamp people are natural craftsmen, and each has different views on this aspect. Under the collective efforts, the original plan was gradually improved. After listening to Bane's enthusiastic report, Lear praised him generously. Bane said with a blushing face, "Sir, the construction of the territory has gradually entered the right track. Next, we should reclaim farmland and grow food. The Noya rice we carry can last for 5 months. The fastest maturing swamp wheat also needs 3 months to mature. We need to leave a certain amount of time for buffer. After going deep into the wilderness, in addition to the dangers everywhere, more importantly, it becomes difficult to trade with the outside world. Relying entirely on buying food from outside is too restrictive. It's okay now that the population is small. If the population continues to increase, the transportation problem alone will make this option unrealistic. Reclaiming farmland is a necessary option. I asked someone to explore the surrounding area. Down pointing arrow, there is a large area of silt accumulation 5 kilometers downstream in the south, which can be reclaimed into farmland. The soil in this area is very fertile, and there is a constant flow of swamp mud and water irrigation from the upstream, so there will definitely be a good harvest. Bane's tone was full of confidence. This time, they brought enough seed swamp wheat. As long as a little reclamation is done, it can be planted. Lear nodded and gave serious instructions. Starting tomorrow, we will arrange for people to go and reclaim farmland. Remember to bring the wetland lizardmen to be on guard. Evacuate in time when you encounter danger. You are the most important wealth of the territory. Bane felt warm in his heart when he heard this. Sir, you really care about your subordinates. Thinking of the confusion and anxiety when he was sent to Lear during his dark slave life, he felt very emotional at this moment. Only when there is a comparison can you know the difference. His eyes became firm. He will do everything to build the city of Wei-Lu for you. After communicating about the reclamation of farmland, Bane talked about another key issue: water source. Although the swamp is not short of water, the water is full of germs and is not suitable for direct drinking. As you said before, boiling it before drinking reduces the diarrhea and illness of the tribe, but the taste of swamp water is too fishy and not suitable for long-term living. More urgent than reclaiming farmland is the need to find a clean water source. Hearing Bain's serious words, Lear's eyes condensed slightly. If there is no food, you can still get it through hunting and fishing, but if there is no clean water source, it can be fatal. I will focus on searching for water sources when I go out to explore these days. Are there any other problems that need to be solved? My lord, our manpower is barely enough for now, but if the territory expands, it will be far from enough. There are only hundreds of swamp people, and the wetland lizardmen as warriors cannot participate in production. For such a large territory, there are only hundreds of laborers, which is simply impossible. Lier nodded. I will arrange this. With the magical skill of the remaining power of the gods, there is a solution to the manpower problem. But races like the half-murlocs, whose bodies are covered in mucus and smelly, are really disgusting, and he doesn't like them either. After talking, Lear took a deep breath as he watched Bain's leaving figure. A blank, slightly exposed city, lacking everything. Comrades still need to work hard. After calming down, he stood up and walked out of the tent. The stars were already twinkling in the sky. Subconsciously, he turned his head to look at the center. Each of the vine fairies lit up themselves at this moment, becoming light bulbs that controlled the power of starlight and accelerated the growth of starry sky vines. This has become a sight in the city of Wailu. After instructing Haggis to arrange for personnel to be on guard, he returned to his exclusive tent and fell asleep. On August 8, the reclamation of farmland to the south of Down-Pointing Arrow began on the morning of the 8th. At least 50 swamp people are participating, and farming is expected to begin on the 20th. Swamp wheat, as long as there is a lot of fertile swamp silt and water, can be cultivated all year round, regardless of the season, and can grow in winter. And it only takes 3 months to mature, making it the most common and best crop in swamps. After leaving the swamp, this wheat will lose all its characteristics and its yield will be reduced by half. This is a crop that belongs exclusively to swamps and is rarely cultivated by outsiders. For 2 consecutive days on the 8th and 9th, Lear searched and hunted around the city of Dew. But there was still no trace of the smelly giant monster that the swamp tree people said. However, on the afternoon of the 9th, traces of the 2-headed ogre were found 15 kilometers east of the territory. This is a huge group of more than 70 people, with an average level of up to 10. The average height reaches 2.5 meters, like little giants. 2 hideous and ugly heads grow on the neck, giving people a chilling feeling. Wearing animal skin clothing, his body is strong and powerful, and his muscles are like inflated balloons, bulging high. The weapons around him were all thick trees. On the land where the 2-headed ogres gathered, a dozen rough wooden houses were built. Lear even discovered that the other party had surrounded a piece of grass and was keeping something in it. However, it was impossible to see clearly because of the thick grass. After Lear discovered these 2-headed ogres, he did not rush to take action and slowly evacuated the area. The level difference is too big, and capturing this gathering place of wild monsters will definitely cost a huge price. The strength in hand is not enough. This made him feel a little anxious. The 2-headed ogre has built a house and settled down, and will inevitably continue to explore and occupy the land. It was only a matter of time before Wailu City was discovered by the other party. He needed to deal with this danger as soon as possible. In addition to the threat of the 2-headed ogre, Lear's water source problem has still not been solved. After searching a large area for 2 days, no clean water source was found. The originally stored water had been exhausted on the night of the 8th, and only half a barrel was left in his tent. Everyone began to carry buckets to collect water in the swamp and settle it. The next day, it was filtered again with cloth, and then boiled for drinking. However, the odor and bitterness of the swamp water are still strong, and simple treatment is far from being able to remove it, making it difficult to swallow. Lear also did not expect that the threat of the swamp monster that he was most worried about did not have much impact. Instead, it was the most inconspicuous water that caused problems first. On the evening of the 9th, after exploring the territory of the 2-headed ogre, Lear did not continue the search and returned to the city of Dew. At this time, a group of Meyer people were filling water from the smelly muddy water into wooden barrels for sedimentation and filtration. Their lips were dry and their faces were listless. They looked at the murky water in the bucket and swallowed from time to time. But I would rather hold back than drink the smelly water boiled after filtering the silt. On the other side, a large pot was set up on the grass. The water was boiling. An iron pot filled with cold water was placed on it. The water vapor that rushed up quickly condensed under the iron pot and dripped onto the wooden basin for distillation. By doing this, you can get some clean water with less bad smell. But this big pot is not enough to supply hundreds of people to burn and smoke. Grown-ups. When Bane saw him returning, he hurriedly stepped forward to salute. Lear looked at the crowd fetching water and said in a deep voice, "If there are 2 extra pots, the water cannot be stopped." Bane responded immediately, "I've sent people to collect the wood." Lear nodded. This was just a temporary solution. Finding a suitable water source was the key. Pain in the brain. Not in the mood to talk much, he asked Bane to go down and make arrangements, then silently came to the central area and watched the vine fairies cultivating the starry sky vines. Every day, this building would undergo new changes, making him full of expectations. The sun sets, the moon rises, and the stars shine. The swamp people who had been busy all day had fallen asleep, and only the wetland lizard people who were still keeping vigil in the outer area were awake. Lear had no intention of sleeping, so he came to the central area and watched the vine fairy building a house, silently waiting until late at night and early in the morning. The time on the intelligence system quietly jumped from August 9th to August 10th. A new prompt immediately appeared in the intelligence system. The intelligence system has been cooled down and the intelligence can be refreshed. Do you want to refresh it? Lear's spirit perked up, and his inner emotions surged instantly. Refresh. The next second after confirmation, 5 pieces of information were quietly generated. 1. 5 kilometers to the southwest, there is a field of roses growing, with as many as 12 varieties, 1 star. 2. 10 kilometers to the north of Up-Pointing Arrow, the smelly giant monster occupies a ruins building. The building will appear on the 15th of every month, and will automatically disappear on the 20th, 2 stars. 3. The corrupted orcs discovered that drying black dragon broadleaf grass and mixing it with blood to create smoke would put the swamp wasps into coma, but the smoke could only cause coma for 10 minutes. They did not control the time well, resulting in heavy casualties. Add the earth dragon feces can greatly enhance the effect, 2 stars. 4. 20 kilometers northeast, in the hills growing with vines, there lives a group of bubble beasts. The bubbles they spit out can filter out impurities in the mud and obtain clean water, 3 stars. 5. Down-Pointing Arrow in the mud pool 10 kilometers south of Down-Pointing Arrow, there lives a group of dragon blood red fish. The meat is extremely delicious, without spines and bones, 3 stars. 1 star for 1, 2 stars for 2, 3 stars for 2. The information refreshed this time is valuable. Lear was in a good mood. Take a careful look at the first one. The previous intelligence mentioned that Philena is looking for more types of rose flowers in order to make a breakthrough. There are actually 12 species in that area. Next time I return to Lowland City, I will give you a gift. The other party shouldn't be stingy in returning the gift, right? That's the princess of Llewellyn City, the flower of the north. Tisk, 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 the upper limit of the loan amount is exaggeratedly high. The second piece of information is about the smelly giant monster. The opponent occupies a ruins building. It shows traces on the 15th of every month and disappears on the 20th. No wonder there are no traces in the past few days. The ruins and buildings are all derived from ancient ruins, and such things may hide great treasures. The main plain of Noel has a long history. It has experienced 8 wars of gods, destroyed civilizations, buried cities, and countless shattered plains. Because of the passage of time, some were covered by the earth, and some flowed into the dimensional plane. By chance, these ancient ruins will be revealed. There may be hidden treasures that make the king tremble, and there may be buried artifacts of ancient gods. Of course, there is also the possibility of encountering extreme terror. The ruins building occupied by the smelly giant demon is obviously a good thing, otherwise the other party would not be able to live so freely. You must go and see it then. The third piece of information greatly increased Lear's interest. No wonder those rotten orcs dared to attack the swamp wasps. It turns out there is such a secret. The following tips are also very interesting. Using earth dragon feces can greatly increase the power. Isn't this a coincidence? He still had some genuine giant dragon excrement left in his hand, which was not even a bit stronger than earth dragon excrement. Meyer Queen Bee can activate the treasure of talent, he will decide. Information number 4 3-star value. Bubble Beast can filter out sediment to obtain clean water. Lear took a deep breath, and most of the stress of the past few days disappeared. The intelligence system was indeed triggered based on what he had recently come into contact with. This piece of information can solve a big problem. I haven't found anything on the water source issue in the past few days, and I'm almost sick. Without food, we can still rely on hunting. Without clean water, it is almost impossible to live a day. Living on distilled water is not a long-term solution. It is indeed worth 3 stars of information and deserves this value. Seeing the 5th item, Lear's eyes moved slightly. Dragon blood red fish, you will know it is extraordinary when you hear this name. The farmland has been reclaimed, but we can't just eat wheat bread, right? Meat, eggs and milk. Even without milk, we need to supplement protein. Although the swamp lacks drinkable water, it is not short of water. Catch some and maybe try breeding. The intelligence value is as high as 3 stars. These dragon blood red fish are obviously not ordinary goods. This time, it's a big explosion, and it's comfortable. Satisfied, Lear returned to his tent and fell asleep. The next morning, he summoned the army and searched in the northeast. Today's target is Bubble Beast. Other things can be postponed, but water is not enough. Distillation can quench thirst, but there are too many people and there is not so much wood around to serve as fuel. According to the intelligence, Bubble Beast lives in a small hill with vines growing. In order to be on the safe side, he brought 5 vine fairies. It's just the right professional match. Stepping into the swamp, the morning was with a light mist, the air was very humid, and it felt very comfortable. 5 vine fairies flapped their green wings that seemed to be woven from vines, and flew around Lear with a humming sound. From time to time, they would rub against him or rest on his shoulders. Their giggles were endless. With him around, these little guys would still feel at ease even if they left the vines. The ferocious wetland lizardmen softened their eyes when they saw this warm scene. About 10 minutes after leaving the city of Wet Dew, the wetland lizardmen searching ahead let out a shrill scream. Enemy attack. Lear's eyes fixed, and he immediately led his men forward. About 200 meters ahead, in a sparse forest, a team of wetland lizardmen stared fiercely ahead. Lear looked intently, and a dozen sturdy figures appeared in his sight. Gray-brown skin, hair as dense as a dense forest. Human face, but with ferocity and savagery in the eyes. Over 1.8 meters tall, wearing clothes made of leaves, holding hardwood spears and stone war hammers. These figures give people a wild impact, as if they came out of the primitive wilderness. They are now controlling 2 unconscious lizardmen. The wetland lizardmen also have a captive whose face cannot be seen clearly. Barbarian. Level Intermediate Knight, Level 7. Potential 2 stars. Racial talent, savage physique, with a strong body, endurance far beyond ordinary people, and an additional 35% increase in strength. Skills War Cry, 2 stars. Before attacking, a shocking war cry is issued, and the strength of the self is increased by 20%. When the number of people who issue a war cry reaches 10, the strength is increased by an additional 20%. Beast Instinct, 2 stars. Possessing innate intuition, they can keenly perceive the arrival of danger. Evaluation, they are hunters in the wilderness. 2-star potential, 7-level Intermediate Knight. Barbarian. Barbarians are different from another common race in the wilderness, barbarians. The barbarian civilization is more advanced, with many wild territories and towns. The barbarians wandered in the wilderness like savages. The number of barbarians is generally not large, and it is rare to see a group of 300 to 500 people. There are more small groups of more than 10 or 20 people. However, judging from the appearance of the other party, it is obvious that they have just entered the swamp. Seeing Lear and his party coming, the faces of the barbarians changed obviously. But looking at the unconscious companions in the hands of the wetland lizardmen, they suddenly became agitated again. Speaking the language of the barbarians that outsiders could not understand. A wetland lizard man whispered. Master, we just arrived here and found the traces of these barbarians. The other party directly attacked us. Fortunately, the companions around us have not dispersed yet, and we forcibly captured the unconscious barbarian who was protected by the other party. This barbarian seems to have a high status. After we caught it, the other party dared not attack us again. Lear took a look at the unconscious barbarian and did not see any difference, and there was no difference in attributes. Hearing their conversation, the strongest barbarian leader took 2 steps forward and spoke in a somewhat stiff common language. Human, please release our companions. I am willing to exchange them with your companions. The 7th level hero beside him, Hags, looked cold. Master, barbarians never keep their word. Hearing this, the barbarian leader scolded. Lizardmen, don't compare the Hasham clan with other barbarians. The chief taught us that keeping promises is a virtue that barbarians must have. I can swear to you in the name of the Hasham clan. Moreover, this time we are looking for the surrounding territories and opening up trade, not to make enemies. Quote. Chief, Hasham clan, and start trade. This guy didn't lie. After integrating into the godhood, Lear has an extraordinary keen perception of other people's emotions. Whether they are lying or have malicious intentions, you can tell at a glance. He looked at these guys with some curiosity. A barbarian dressed in leaves wants to start trade. He felt an inexplicable sense of absurdity. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.